Chapter 221. Where did this little girl come from? Murmured one of the geniuses in disbelief. How old can she be? 10 years old, at most? Forget her age, another snapped. The real question is how she even got onto the stage. Silence fell over the arena as the assembled prodigies stared at the purple-skirted figure in the center. Their initial shock gave way to awe and a tinge of dread. Even Ye Cheng, who had thought himself prepared for anything, was momentarily at a loss. The girl before them was Gu Yunxi. She had awakened the legendary heavenly evil saint body and wielded the formidable disaster magic. Under Empress Fufeng's personal tutelage, she had mastered the 9 heavens supreme magic. On top of all that, she was born with the innate purple sky eclipse thunder body, giving her a rock-solid foundation in thundercraft. Admittedly, she had yet to consummate the heart of the great Tao of thunder, but that mattered little. She had already condensed its prototype within her veins. Every movement she made crackled with raw, unrestrained power, forcing even Ye Cheng, her fiercest rival, to remain on his guard. Around them, the giants who had come to witness the duel reeled in surprise. None had anticipated that this seemingly delicate little girl could command such overwhelming force. Yet Ye Cheng, watching from the sidelines, still had no inkling of the true depths of her abilities. And so the contest continued, the air thick with electricity and anticipation. None more electrified than the girl in purple, whose very presence seemed to herald a coming storm. Ye Cheng laughed scornfully as he faced the little girl in the purple skirt. In his eyes, she was nothing more than a pesky ghost playing at strange martial forms, not worth his notice, let alone fear. "Do you really think those silly moves can faze me?" he taunted. "It's pathetic." He took a step closer, his murderous aura rippling like dark water. "Little ghost, you've worked hard to perfect those tricks, but would you rather leave now, or have me show you what true power looks like?" At his words, a cruel grin split Ye Cheng's face. The air around him seemed to harden, and several onlookers, top-tier prodigies all, felt an involuntary chill as his aura intensified. "You won't show mercy?" Ye Cheng hissed. "Are you sure you want to challenge me?" From the corner of her eye, Ye Cheng, who had just arrived, felt the threat in his voice. The bright innocence that always shone in Ye Cheng's eyes flickered out, replaced by a fierce, unbreakable resolve. "You've spent your life bragging about suppressing my sister, Rushuang," Ye Cheng said, his voice low but unwavering. "Then you crushed my brother without a second thought, and now you expect me to simply stand back and let you go? Don't flatter yourself." "Your brother?" murmured one cultivator, bewildered. A hush fell over the gathered crowd. They had heard tales of Qi Yang's southward campaign through the 3,000 realms, how he had spared no one in his path, triumphing over countless geniuses. None had stood up to him, until now. "Has there ever been anyone worthy of being called this little girl's younger brother?" Someone murmured from the crowd. Then, as if struck by a sudden thought, another voice rang out. "Actually, there is." Heads swiveled toward a tall cultivator in dark robes. He cleared his throat and said with quiet authority, "I'm talking about young Master Qingchen, Ye Cheng. He's the one who, only recently, defeated Luo Xuan, the chief of the Black and White Dao Palace, and they say he's not even 10 years old." A stunned hush fell over everyone. Ye Cheng? The legendary God Emperor prodigy, under 10 years old? All eyes darted to Gu Yunxi. Her pale cheeks flushed ever so slightly as she met their astonished gazes. The name Young Master Qingchen had become the hottest topic across the southern Zhuan divine continent. Not only had he taken down Luo Xuan, ranked 20th on the coveted New Land list, but he'd forced the Black and White Dao Palace chief into a full L retreat. Word of that clash still sent shudders through the powerful heirs and star disciples who had witnessed it. And yet, despite all the eyewitness accounts, the rumor that this conqueror was nothing more than a child seemed too incredible to be true. Even those who had seen him in action had trouble reconciling his age with his overwhelming strength. A god emperor under 10 years old? Even in the Golden Age, no such prodigy ever appeared. And yet Gu Yunxi had just declared it openly. Recalling the rumors and the reports brought back by the arrogant geniuses who had ventured into the Hunyuan Emperor's tomb, every monk watching the duel felt their pulse quicken. Eyes wide, they turned to the stage, disbelief etched on their faces. If this girl is telling the truth, an aged cultivator murmured, swallowing hard to steady himself. Then Master Ye Cheng's intelligence was spot on. It means that, alongside the nameless prince, there really is another God Emperor Titan younger than 10 roaming the 3,000 realms. He let the words hang in the air, unable to voice the full magnitude of his shock. Beside him, a young genius gripped his sleeves and spoke in a tremor, staring at Guyanxi. She actually dares to stand against Qiang. She's probably almost as strong as her brother, young Master Ye Cheng. In other words, she's yet another divine emperor prodigy, even younger than 10 years old. A hush fell over the entire arena, every pair of eyes fixed on Guyanxi, who stood alone in the ring. Surprise rippled through the crowd. Even Qiang's gaze sharpened as he studied her with renewed interest. "No wonder you dared to step up," he murmured under his breath. "A divine emperor under 10 years old? Fascinating." Despite his quiet tone, a flicker of unease showed in his eyes. He'd heard whispers of young Master Ye Cheng, brilliant, powerful, and impossibly young, but he dismissed them as court gossip. Now, facing Guyanxi, he could no longer deny the threat. It wasn't fear, just a clear reminder that this family's reputation was deadly serious. Qiang's gaze swept over Ye Cheng and his brother, icy contempt flickering in his eyes. "Your talents are indeed extraordinary," he said coolly, "but both of you are far too young. If you mastered the art of concealing your strength and spent another 10 years in seclusion, perhaps you would one day stand among this world's greatest. But not now." He paused, lips curling into a sneer. "At your current level, even a divine emperor like you isn't qualified to challenge my Taoist. Remain here if you wish, but your future will only grow darker." The moment his words fell, a thunderous boom ripped through the air. Every cultivator froze as Qiang's aura exploded outward. Behind him, his spirit energy ignited into a scorching, blood-red sphere, rising like a demon sun that bathed the battlefield in crimson light. The very air quivered with horror as nightmarish visions swirled within the glow. Seas of blood, mountains of corpses, and the shattered bones of countless prodigies who had fallen victim to the blazing demon war body across the generations. The trump card of the blazing demon war body unfolded before them. Great blazing demon realm. A collective gasp rose from the audience. Has Qi Yang really refined his war body vision to this level? Every top-tier physique harbors a unique vision, but when a war body's vision is fully cultivated, its power can eclipse even the mightiest grand magics. Take Ye Cheng's Chaos Body, for example. It can trigger multiple visions. Chaos Seed Green Lotus, Immortal King ascends the 9 heavens. That alone rival the strength of the top 30 grand magics among the 3,000. Qi Yang's Great Blazing Demon Realm may not match the diversity of Ye Cheng's Chaos Visions, but its destructive force is no less awe-inspiring. Historically, this ultimate technique could only be awakened once the blazing demon war body reached the Emperor realm. Its offensive power places it among the top 300 of all Grand Magi, an extraordinary feat. Now, as Qi Yang opened the gates to his great blazing demon realm, the air itself seemed to warp and ignite, heralding a killing technique of breathtaking fury. The tremors in his breath flared into full view. In that instant, the oppressive force of the Saint Emperor's mid-realm unfurled over the entire battlefield, pressing down on every Tianjiao monk until they gasped for air, their chests tightening with suffocation. "Pathetic brat," Qiang jeered, his voice carrying across the carnage. He stood atop a mound of blood-soaked corpses, a grim smile curling his lips as he gazed down at Ye Cheng. "Do you even grasp how utterly insignificant you are?" All around them, eyes shone with terror. The gathered prodigies had pinned their hopes on this boy, this so-called hope of humanity, yet none dared meet Qiang's murderous glare. And still, Ye Cheng showed no fear. His star-bright eyes flared with challenge. As he felt the raw killing intent radiating from Qiang's great demon domain, he summoned his own fighting spirit, and with it, an aura of death that crackled like a storm. "You dare to swagger before us with such feeble power," he called back, his voice calm and cold. "You expect us to bow to the Taoist backing you? Laughable." Qiang laughed, but Ye Cheng did not flinch. He took a single, confident step forward, and in that heartbeat, the world seemed to shatter. Boom! The very heavens trembled, the earth groaned, and a shockwave of energy ripped outward. announcing the clash of two unyielding wills. In that instant, the void seemed to shudder as countless shifting mists and ineffable divine energies surged outward from Gu Yunqi's body. The very sky quaked and the earth trembled beneath the weight of her power. All around her, cultivators watched in stunned awe as the swirling haze coalesced into a breathtaking manifestation, the wheel of life and death. Yet, this astonishing vision was not a finale, but a beginning, the opening move in a cosmic struggle whose true scope was only now coming into view. Chapter 222. As the chaotic energies converged, the wheel of life and death spun to completion. A low rumble filled the air. Within Ye Cheng's body, bolts of lightning crackled into being, each a thunder-forged dragon, thousands of feet long, bristling with destructive power that made even giants tremble. In mere breaths, 108 lightning dragons ascended, weaving and circling in perfect harmony. Then they melded into a colossal seal of light, 10,000 feet across, a roiling thunder pool that plummeted behind Ye Cheng. It anchored itself between heaven and earth, halting the silent motion of the wheel of life and death. "Thunderpool subdues the sky?" someone shouted in disbelief. "That's the nine heavens' supreme divine power," another voice whispered with awe. "A technique only those who've perfected their cultivation can unleash." Several masters exchanged stunned looks. The nine heavens' supreme divine power was famed as one of the top 100 legacies among the 3,000 divine arts, a martial inheritance of the highest order. Ye Cheng's breath caught in his throat. He could scarcely believe what he was seeing. The ancient inheritance, the legendary divine vision, had awakened within the young girl before him, Gu Yunqi. What was even more astonishing was that she had refined it into not just one, but two peerless manifestations of power. A low murmur rippled through the audience of heaven-ranking masters. Their eyes were fixed on the churning veil of chaos that swirled behind Gu Yunqi's form on the stage. Finally, one of the oldest elders stirred himself to speak, his voice trembling with barely concealed shock. That can't be right. The Thunderpond, Zhen Tianyu, should contain no trace of chaotic energy, nor command the wheel of life and death." Another ancient giant stepped forward, mouth agape. "Young lady, the divine vision you've triggered isn't merely the Thunderpond Zhen Tianyu. You've simultaneously manifested the Hunyuan life and death seal." A stunned silence fell over the hall. Dozens of prodigies blinked in confusion, but the venerable masters, those who had studied these cosmic techniques for centuries, stared at Gu Yunqi with eyes wide as saucers. Each of them recoiled slightly, as if chilled by an unseen wind, and exchanged looks that betrayed their mounting fear and wonder. Up on the stage, Gu Yunqi's serene face betrayed none of the chaos she commanded. Yet as the crowd's astonishment swelled, Ye Cheng felt a thrill of both awe and dread. Whatever this meant for her future, and for the balance of power among the great sects, one thing was certain: history was being rewritten before his very eyes. The power of the Hunyuan life and death seal? Does that mean this boy has also mastered the great divine power of disaster? Across the 3,000 great divine powers, the nine heavens' great divine power barely cracks the top 100. The great divine power of disaster, by contrast, is a superlative inheritance, easily ranking among the top 30. Both are peerless killing arts, each capable of overshadowing the world's finest geniuses. Yet here they stand, fused within a single child, not yet 10 years old, and honed to the point that their aura ripples the air like living magic. This isn't mere prodigious talent, it's downright terrifying. Two venerable masters exchanged incredulous looks. The younger one leaned forward, voice hushed. How on earth was Ye Cheng trained to such heights? Before he could finish, the elder shook his head, disbelief etched into every line of his face. Training? There's no technique or regimen capable of producing this in a child under 10. It's clearly a divine blessing. How enviable that both she and young Master Qingqin's family are so gifted. A ripple of agreement ran through the assembled crowd. The veteran masters, leaning against the pavilion balustrade, exchanged knowing looks. Many were tempted to stride onto the stage then and there and proclaim Gu Yunqi as their goddaughter. If only the rules permitted such grand gestures. Above them, Qiang stared at Gu Yunqi, eyes wide with disbelief. A prodigy tempered by the blazing might of a demon body, he forced himself to calm down. Greed soon replaced shock. He sneered. "You little brat, so you've actually cultivated 2 volumes of supreme magic arts. Ha! I must admit, I underestimated you." His voice dropped to a menacing whisper, "But even those spells won't help you cross the realm divide." With that, Qiang unleashed the boundless fury of his great blazing demon realm behind him. Flames roared to life, licking the edges of the platform as his killing intent crackled in the air. The crowd recoiled in alarm, but Qiang's eyes glinted with delight. 2 volumes of forbidden magic? Such power was irresistible, and he intended to claim it all. "It's truly a godsend," Qiang murmured, a cold smile curling his lips. He decided not to slay Guyunshi outright, but to seize her instead, probe her soul, and wrench from her the 2 volumes of arcane inheritance. Retaliation from her allies afterward? Ridiculous. In his eyes, no force in the world could match the might of the celestial divine tower. With its protection, what was there to fear? His mind raced like lightning. In a heartbeat, he unleashed the great blazing demon realm's ultimate formation. Above Guyunshi hovered a colossal, blood-red sun, its surface boiling like wildfire. Encircling it were mountains of corpses and seas of gore, pressing down with crushing weight. Around the arena, every onlooker, whether rising genius or venerable titan, fell into stunned silence, hearts clenched with dread. Their gazes were locked on Guyunshi, helpless with worry. Even the Emperor-tier ancestors of the Beiming sword sect braced themselves, ready to surge forward the moment she showed any sign of faltering. Just when all hope seemed lost, and Guyunshi's defeat felt certain, a crisp, unwavering voice rang out from the stage, a young girl's clear tone cutting through the clammy air. "Can't cross your realm's boundary?" Guyunshi's voice dripped with contempt. "Not only is your mind dull, but you're painfully arrogant, and your eyesight truly abysmal." Before anyone could respond, Guyunshi sprang into the air. Her lithe form rose to meet the descending blood sun. Behind her, the seals of the Thunder Pond and the life and death diagram intertwined, coalescing into twin torrents of divine power. At her command, those torrents hurtled forward and smashed into the great blazing demon realm of the blazing sun with cataclysmic force. A deafening boom rolled through the cosmos. From the point of impact, countless shafts of divine radiance burst outward, flooding the arena in searing light. Even the mighty giants lining its edge involuntarily shielded their eyes. The battlefield's center was obscured by the brilliance. Amid that incandescent storm, neither the towering behemoths nor the figure of Qi Yang, caught squarely in the blast, had the luxury of reacting to Guyunshi's deadly technique. Every gaze was riveted on a single marvel, Guyunshi's aura, unfurling at last in its full, resplendent glory. They'd all gotten it wrong. That tremor wasn't the aura of a divine emperor, it was the power of a saint emperor, nearly on par with Qi Yang. Wait, she can't be a divine emperor under 10 years old. But Miss Yunxi is a saint emperor prodigy, and she's not even 10 yet. Chapter 223 Crack. The assembly of monks froze as Qi Yang's blood-red divine aura, the very symbol of the great blazing demon domain, shuddered and shattered like a pane of glass. Countless shards of crimson light fanned out across the sky, then dissolved into nothingness between heaven and earth. "No!" Qi Yang roared, panic ripping through him as his realm collapsed. Desperately, he unleashed every ounce of his spiritual power. His veins flared scarlet, his blood igniting. A dangerous last resort granted by his god and demon combat vessel, which could burn its wielder's own lifeblood for a savage surge of strength. Within moments, jagged, inhuman scales erupted across Chiang's flesh, and his speed skyrocketed. He twisted, straining to evade Guyunshi's incoming spirit ring attack. But the burst of arcane energy was already upon him, and there was simply nowhere left to go. The clash of divine powers unleashed a killing aura that rippled outward over 10,000 feet in every direction. Whether it was the purifying light of the nine heavens' great divine power, or the oppressive shadow of the evil great divine power, the two forces converged into a single, earth-shattering strike. With a thunderous crack of shattering flesh and splintering bone, Qi Yang was caught squarely beneath the collapsing thunder pool divine diagram. His roar of agony cut through the air as the divine scales along his body, hallmarks of his god-demon bloodline, exploded into fragments. In an instant, half of his form was annihilated by the thunderous onslaught, leaving him a broken ruin on the battlefield. Silence fell over the arena. Xiang collapsed to one knee, blood bubbling at his lips, each breath a ragged gasp. Around him, dozens of elite prodigies and seasoned warriors watched in stunned disbelief, their blood running cold. Their eyes kept drifting to the lone figure standing opposite, Ye Cheng, barely 10 years old, his expression calm beneath the residual glow of divine energy. None could have imagined that a boy his age would not only challenge but utterly rout a master of the blazing demon war body, let alone shatter the prized god-demon scale armor that had been Xiang's ultimate defense. As the thunder fades and the last echoes of power die away, the arena remains suspended in awe. Today, an era of invincibility has fallen, and in its place, a new legend is born. Ye Cheng, the child prodigy whose mastery of divine power will be remembered for generations to come. The assembled heirs of the Void God Tower stood frozen, hearts pounding and limbs trembling. Their once proud god-demon scale armor lay in ruins, shattered beyond repair. Even if Xiang survived this onslaught, his god-demon bloodline was all but destroyed, his prodigious talents snuffed out. For a genius, such a fate was still preferable to a direct execution by Gu Yunqi's hand. Is there anyone from the Void God Tower who dares to challenge me next? Gu Yunqi's clear, childish voice rang out across the arena. Every spectator, geniuses, domain lords, and titans alike, fell silent at her words. None dared underestimate the little girl who had already felled warrior after warrior. Beneath her gaze, the would-be challengers at the Void God Tower glanced at one another in fear. No one stepped forward. With such feeble power, you still dare call yourself ruler of the world? Gu Yunqi sneered, eyes narrowing as she leapt gracefully from the stage. Bored, she waved toward Jian Rushuang. Rushuang, take care of them here. I have business elsewhere. Of course, Miss Yunqi. Please be careful, Jian Rushuang replied with a deep, respectful bow. The assembled giants and prodigies exchanged glances, but none challenged Rushuang's deference. In fact, many watched her with envy. Poor Rushuang has nothing but luck on her side, one murmured. She's a disciple of the unnamed prince, and now she stands shoulder to shoulder with Miss Yunqi and Master Ye Cheng. Beiming Sword Sect couldn't ask for a better daughter, another whispered. She'll surely ascend to the very pinnacle of this world. I don't think I'll ever get over my jealousy, a third sighed, shaking his head. Meanwhile, Xiang and the other Shushan Tower geniuses faded into the background, forgotten in the wake of Yunqi's exit. Truly, their unseen Taoist patron from Shushan Tower must be extraordinarily powerful. Only someone with such might could sway Xiang, the dreaded fiery demon battle body, and win him over as a loyal general. Talent and strength alone aren't enough. Even the greatest prodigies must prove themselves in battle to earn true prestige. Xiang had compiled an impressive record until today's match shattered both him and the Void God Tower's once unassailable reputation. This wasn't the skirmish outside the Ziwei Imperial Palace. It was a head-on clash of magical power, a virtually crushing defeat decided in a single duel. Unless the Void God Tower's Grandmaster emerges from seclusion and defeats Ye Cheng himself, no string of victories by lesser disciples will ever erase the stain of this loss. You're nothing but frogs in a well, one onlooker sneered. The Void God Tower's prodigies slunk away, faces burning with shame and hearts seething with resentment. Just wait until our Grandmaster returns from retreat, they vowed. Then you'll see the true Nine Heavens Supreme Dragon, the greatest in the world. Chapter 10. The disgrace we suffered today, my Taoist will wash it away for us. The disciples of Shushan Tower ground their teeth at those words. Only 3 years ago, their master, Ye Cheng, had strode out of seclusion like a tempest, and the memory of his power still shone brightly in their minds. Thanks to that display, the sting of today's humiliation was already fading, replaced by eager anticipation. They understood exactly why Master Ye Cheng had sealed himself off for the past 3 years. Beyond his routine cultivation, he was undertaking the sacred ordeal of condensing his divine and demonic blood. For every generation's battle body, whether god or demon, this purification was essential. First, one must purge every trace of mortal impurity, the mortal blood so scorned by the disciples of Void God Tower. Only when the last of those human flaws was burned away could one's blood be called pure and one's battle body deemed truly complete. Such a task, they all knew, was legendary in its difficulty, so immense that not even the direct heirs of the Void God Tower had fully mastered it. Yet the disciples of Shushan Tower believed that Ye Cheng was on the verge of surpassing every precedent. If their master emerged victorious from his trial, then the defeat they had suffered today would be nothing more than a distant memory, washed clean by the might of his perfected essence. And so, with renewed resolve shining in their eyes, they waited. The tower's ancient halls thrummed with anticipation, every heartbeat echoing the promise that soon Shushan's name would rise, unblemished and supreme. Ever since the great Taoist sects surrendered to the gods and demons, their ultimate achievement has been to cultivate a battle body with up to 90% god and demon bloodline purity. No one has ever reached 100%, until now. The Void God sect stands alone. Their prodigy, Ye Cheng, was born with a peerless battle body already exceeding 90% purity. From the moment he drew his first breath, he carried the very essence of gods and demons within him. After 3 years of secluded cultivation in the legendary Void God pool, he emerges not merely strengthened, but tempered to the edge of perfection. Even if he falls short of absolute completeness, he will stand among the mightiest warriors in history. In every golden age, a perfected battle body means unrivaled power. Such a warrior could sweep the lands, laying low countless geniuses. As it stands, Qiang, whose battle body has only reached 70% purity, has already crushed the heirs of the great sects, including Luo Shengxian, son of the Chixiao god. Now, with Ye Cheng born at over 90% and honed to near flawlessness, a new legend is poised to shatter all precedents. After 3 years of seclusion, his power will only grow more fearsome. When that day comes, everyone cheering for Gu Yunxi, and even those lofty Qingchen prince and His Highness Wuming, will finally see who the true hero of this era really is. No one could say for certain who spoke those words among Qiang's entourage. But by the time the dust settled over Beiming City, news of the blazing demon war body's utter defeat had raced across the 3,000 realms and rippled through all of Nanshuan Shenzhou. The shock was seismic, and the details of that clash sent shivers through every corner of the realm. Ye Cheng had already attained a certain fame throughout Shenzhou, though whispers lingered about his youth and potential. Now, with the astounding rise of Gu Yunxi, who single-handedly overwhelmed the reigning master of the blazing demon war body, his achievements shone even brighter than Ye Cheng's. Skeptics fell silent, replaced by boundless awe for Yunxi and his mysterious sister. Countless inquiries into their family background or the hidden force that supported them all ended the same way, in total, unbreakable silence. Their origins remained an uncharted secret, and the realm could only wonder what heights these two prodigies might reach. Shenzhou stretches out, vast and boundless. Even if you confine your view to its southern reaches, the 3,000 realms there are each magnificent in their own right. So when word spread of 2 geniuses emerging from the once overlooked Lingyu realm, most people simply assumed they must have come from one of the great powers, Qianyu, Huayu, or the like. Few ever bothered to investigate a remote backwater such as Lingyu, and reliable news from there was all but impossible to come by. Ye Cheng, however, trusted his own intelligence. When he learned of Yunxi and his sister's astonishing breakthroughs, he dismissed the skeptics and went out of his way to commend their progress. After offering the 2 young prodigies his earnest encouragement, he personally escorted them back to Jianglin City. At home, the anticipation was tangible. Ye Cheng's youngest heir, already marked by destiny with a red 9th grade fate and blessed with an innate holy body, was about to be born. In the days leading up to his son's arrival, Ye Cheng had little patience for the swirling rumors or the courtly gossip that trailed his name. He paid the clamor of the outside world no mind, but that hardly meant the wider powers were indifferent. Word of Lingyu's hidden treasures and of Ye Cheng's sudden interest in those distant reaches was already stirring the currents. Among those taking keen note was the august Ziwei Imperial Palace. Chapter 224. Has Qiyang finally fallen? When the news reached him, Ye Cheng's expression remained as calm as ever. Standing before him in anxious anticipation was one of the Ziwei Imperial Palace's true disciples, a sweet, wide-eyed girl who'd long admired him from afar. Today, she'd rushed over to relay the rumor she'd just learned. "Senior brother, aren't you even the slightest bit surprised?" she asked, brows knitting in confusion. Ye Cheng allowed himself a small, wry smile. He adored nothing more than the art of the sword, and, blessedly, to her embarrassment, had barely noticed the gentle warmth in her gaze. "The blazing demon battle body is indeed a fearsome technique," he said, voice soft but confident. "Yet Qi Yang hasn't even broken through to great success in his cultivation. His power is impressive, but not invincible." She blinked, still uncertain. Ye Cheng continued, eyes drifting to the lacquered floor as he recalled that fateful encounter. When Qi Yang came to challenge the sacred sword of Ziwei Imperial Palace, Mistress Ji Mingyue was in deep seclusion and did not intervene. Even so, I could tell his divine and demonic blood was impure. If a 70% awakening of the god-demon lineage can't match a perfected blazing demon battle body, what hope does anyone have, least of all the Beiming sword sect's Jian Rushuang, to defeat him? The intruder must have been Jian Rushuang of the Beiming sword sect. The very sword she carries, a gift from that nameless swordsman, still stirs a strange sorrow in me. At the name Jian Rushuang, Ye Cheng's face softened, a flicker of nostalgia in his eyes. The young female disciple from Ziwei Imperial Palace, who'd been delivering the report, flushed with envy. "Senior brother," she teased, "are you really so obsessed with the Beiming Emperor's daughter?" "Absolutely," Ye Cheng replied, nodding without a second's hesitation. The girl's pout deepened, as if on the verge of tears, but then her brow relaxed into a wry smile. "If those old palace elders hadn't insisted I remain here, refining my cultivation until I attained Saint Emperor level," he continued solemnly, "I'd have moved into the Beiming sword sect in a heartbeat." "In that case," the disciple leaned forward, curiosity alight in her eyes. Ye Cheng took a deep, steadying breath. "I'd watch the Beiming Emperor's daughter practice her heaven burial sword technique every single day." Jian Rushuang, the Emperor's own child? What sort of swordswoman must she be? There really is no comparison between this and the true sword intent unleashed by the Heaven Interment sword or the Taoic vision of that nameless Taoist. The little girl's eyes brimmed with tears as she stared at her senior brother's stern expression, unable to find a word. Finally, she swallowed and forced herself to speak. "Senior brother, you asked me to bring you crucial news. Is that it? That the Northern Ming princess defeated Qi Yang? If it's only that, why would I have risked disturbing your seclusion?" Ji Haoran's brow furrowed, and he let out a low sigh as understanding broke over him. He was supposed to be hidden away in meditation, and everyone who knew the true gap in strength between Jian Rushuang and Qi Yang, especially after Qi Yang had been stunned by his sister's emergence, would never have allowed their junior sister to make this journey for so trivial a report. Clearly, Yuner had something far more important to tell him. Seeing her senior brother finally react, Yuner's lips curved into a triumphant smile. Ye Cheng's eyes snapped open. At last, some reaction. Cao Yun inclined her head. "I bring word that Qi Yang has been defeated, but the one who bested him is so extraordinary that the Imperial Palace ancestors have commanded me to inform both you and the two princesses." "You want to tell my sister too?" Ye Cheng's voice caught. Why is this matter so important? He struggled to make sense of her words. In death, the ancestors of the Ziwei Imperial Palace had witnessed countless geniuses, but they held Ye Cheng's sister in especially high regard, calling her the supreme prodigy. If they deemed her retreat 10 times more critical than informing Ye Cheng himself, first true disciple of the palace, then this news must be earth-shattering. Cao Yun produced a pictostone. "Words alone won't do it justice. The ancestors prepared this for you. Once you see the image, everything will become clear." She placed the smooth stone in his palm. Ye Cheng concentrated, and the image within began to glow. Swish! Images of Ye Cheng battling Qi Yang in the Northern Light Arena sprang to life within the photostone, and Ji Haoran felt his spirit surge. At first, his face remained calm, but the instant Ye Cheng unleashed his magical power, Ji Haoran's composure cracked. Cao Yun reacted with a start, though he'd already seen these very visions. His surprise was no less genuine than Ji Haoran's. When the final scene faded, Cao Yun lowered his voice. "Senior brother, do you now understand what our ancestors meant?" Ye Cheng's talent is beyond monstrous. Ji Haoran finally managed. It's almost godlike. Even the Emperor's daughter should be watching him from the very start. But despite his words, Ji Haoran remained stunned by the stone's revelation, staring at the empty air long after the images vanished. It wasn't until Cao Yun reminded him several times that Ji Haoran finally snapped out of his trance. He blinked, as though waking from a dream, and his voice came out unnaturally stiff. Right, of course. Junior sister, don't forget your morning cultivation. Cao Yun stared in surprise. Even if Gu Yunxi truly were some fearsome monster, she thought her senior brother wouldn't be this on edge, would he? But Ji Haoran had already tuned her out. Junior sister, thank you for sending the message, but you don't need to use an image stone for me. I'll carry it to Her Highness myself. I'll remember to thank you properly next time. Without waiting for any reply, he unfurled his divine wings and shot into the sky. In mere moments, he arrived before the secluded palace where Ji Mingyue had lived in meditation for years. As the beloved daughter of the Ziwei Emperor, and lauded as the most bewitching talent ever to grace the imperial court, Ji Mingyue's fortune and prowess were the stuff of legends. Her private palace, from the enclosing formation to the spirit puppets patrolling its corridors, even down to the marble columns themselves, was all a serendipitous prize she'd won on one of her journeys beyond the realm. Every enchantment, every spirit guardian, rivaled the finest imperial armaments in both power and craftsmanship. As Ji Haoran approached the grand gate, the nearest guardian puppet sprang to life, its joints clicking in warning. He didn't hesitate. With a deft motion, he produced the silver token his sister had entrusted to him. The puppet bowed its head and stepped aside, its fierce glare softening in recognition. Ji Haoran dashed inside, barely breaking his stride, before drawing a shimmering series of runes in midair, ancient seals that crackled with forbidden energy. Then he thrust out his voice in a single urgent cry. "Sister, come out at once. I have grave news." "What has happened?" came the reply, as pure and refreshing as mountain spring water. From the heart of the palace, a figure emerged, bathed in a diaphanous glow. She moved with impossible grace, every step measured and light as falling snow. Her skin was the pale luster of white jade. Her gown, woven in tones of twilight purple, trailed behind her like a whisper of wind. Tall and statuesque, she carried herself with an ethereal dignity that banished all thought of mundanity. Her presence was both pristine and profound, as if she were a lotus blooming untouched in a sea of dust. But what struck Ji Haoran most was the soft, rhythmic pulse of her spirit aura, gentle yet vast, an unspoken proof of her extraordinary power and the depth of her serenity. The pressure rolling off his sister's aura had already reached the perfected stage of the Xian Emperor realm, just one breath away from breaking into the venerable. Ji Haoran felt the tremor of power surrounding her and involuntarily bowed his head, shock tightening his chest. The last time Mingyue had entered seclusion, she'd only been a mid-stage Saint Emperor. How much time had passed for her to advance so far? Had he disturbed her training too soon? Mingyue's voice, calm and assured, eased his worry. "The world has changed, Haoran. With the Yuanling holy body, I command the world's sympathy and the help of all pathways. My cultivation was bound to accelerate. A brief interruption won't harm me. Now, what's so urgent?" Startled back to his senses, Haoran snapped a crisp salute, then offered her the projection stone. "Sister, you'll understand once you see this." She studied the glowing shard in his outstretched palm, curiosity flickering in her eyes. Gently turning it in her fingers, she awakened the image within and let its silent revelations unfold before her mind. Swish! The crystalline viewing stone glowed, replaying the Battle of Beiming in vivid detail. Ji Mingyue watched breathlessly until the image froze on Gu Yunxi, her arms outstretched as she channeled a surge of magic. Lightning cracked and danced across the stone's surface, and Mingyue's eyes went wide. "That's Lei Qi Zhen Tianyu!" She barely dared to whisper the words. Only a true master of the Nine Sky Great Magic could unleash such a thunderous phenomenon. Suddenly, everything made sense. This girl, Gu Yunxi, must be the very master they'd thought lost, now re-emerged as the head of Ziwei Imperial Palace and Empress Fufeng's newest disciple. Yet none of it added up. Their master had vanished without a trace while exploring the secret realm. No reports, no word of his fate, just the astonishing fact that, in his absence, they'd inexplicably gained a junior sister. "Do you think he's hurt?" Ji Haoran asked, voice low and tense. He shifted uneasily. Before venturing into that mysterious domain, their master had performed some uncomfortably intimate rites on their ancestors, rituals the disciples still blushed to recall. Now they could only guess what had befallen him, and whether Gu Yunqi's arrival heralded his return or something far stranger. Ji Mingyue pressed her fingers to her forehead as she pieced it together. Perhaps Master had deliberately delayed his return to the capital until his wounds fully healed, afraid that the imperial elders would exploit his weakness. At her brother's suggestion, she finally understood why Master had stayed away so long. A rare helplessness shadowed her elegant features. "If that's true," she whispered, "then my little sister is in grave danger." She shook her head sharply, banishing the fearful thought, and turned her attention to the spirit-etched crystal in her hand. In the recent battle of Beiming City, Ye Cheng had secured a near-total victory, shattering Qiang's arrogance and routing his legions in one stroke. The triumph had skyrocketed Ye Cheng's renown, but what the world didn't see was far more alarming. Hidden behind Qiang's downfall stood the mysterious figure known only as Daozi, the virtual god. No one outside the inner circles suspected his involvement, but Ji Mingyue, blessed with the Yuanling saint body and its innate affinity for all spiritual paths, felt the truth in her bones. Daozi was no ordinary strategist. He was a prodigy whose talent and strength rivaled her own. It was this genius who had commanded Qiang as his first general. Ji Mingyue's eyes narrowed. If Daozi had truly set his sights on them, then the safety of her family, and especially her little sister, hung in the balance. She slipped the crystal into her sleeve, steeling herself for the storm to come. "If Qiang is abandoned, he certainly won't sit back and do nothing," Ji Mingyue said, her tone firm. "Haoran, send out search parties at once to find that young lady," she commanded. "Once you locate her, bring her and her brother straight back to the imperial palace. We must keep them under our protection." Ji Mingyue knew all too well that, left to fend for themselves in the outside world, those two children would be helpless against a virtual god Taoist, no matter how well-meaning their detached master might be, or how fortunate their family connections. "Understood," Haoran replied, bowing before hurrying off to carry out her orders. Chapter 25. By Ji Haoran's command, the Ziwei Imperial Palace mobilized at once. A battalion of stewards and towering guards was dispatched throughout the 3,000 realms to track down any sign of Gu Yunqi. Yet Ji Haoran harbored no fear that this search would expose the true identity of his rogue master. Rumors of the Beiming City battle had already roiled every corner of Nanchuan Shenzhou, drawing a myriad of sects into their own manhunts for Yunqi and her brother. In that chaotic swell of seekers, one more contingent from Ziwei Palace scarcely mattered. Meanwhile, news of Beiming's clash had reached the Shushan Tower, and with it, Qiang's ignominious return. The same disciples who had departed, brimming with confidence, now slunk home like plucked roosters, their heads bowed and spirits crushed. Qiang himself looked the most unsettled of all. In the fierce engagement at Beiming, his once promising prowess had been nearly destroyed, and the fiery demon Bloodline coursing through his veins had been reduced to less than 10% of its former strength. Though Ye Cheng and the other disciples tried to steady their hearts with the thought that Master Shu Shen would one day redeem them, the uncertainty gnawed at them all. They hadn't seen him in years, ever since he cast aside the stone tablet and withdrew into seclusion. What heights of cultivation had he achieved in that time? They could only guess. Just as their anxiety reached its peak, a clear, cool voice rang out. "You may come with me to see Daozi." A woman in a flowing scarlet robe stepped forward. Her bearing was elegant yet aloof, and she shot Ye Cheng and his companions a single contemptuous glance. Ye Cheng forced himself to bow. "Thank you, Miss Honglian, for informing us." He could feel her disdain as acutely as if she had scornfully spat at his feet. Each disciple lowered his head, unwilling to meet the Red Lotus Maid's eyes. Though she held no formal rank within the sect, Miss Honglian was Master Shushen's personal attendant, closer to him than any sworn follower, and her own talents were whispered about in reverent tones. She possessed a Red Lotus demon body, an extraordinary cultivation nearly on par with Ye Cheng's own blazing demon battle form. Without hesitation, Ye Cheng and his comrades followed the Red Lotus girl into the depths of the Shushan Tower. The tower's mountain gate stood within the dreaded life-forbidden zone on Wuyuan Cliff, an accursed precipice where Feixian-level titans once fell, their immortal blood staining the rock a hellish red. Over the centuries, their lingering resentment had warped this place into a haunted realm of restless spirits. Wuyuan Cliff plunged into an abyss so vast its bottom was never seen. Unlike a normal spirit tower, Shushan Tower did not rise toward the sky, but descended endlessly into that void. Ye Cheng's party walked the spiraling staircase that clung to the tower's exterior, each step taking them deeper into shadow. With every tier they passed, the air grew colder and more oppressive. Faint, anguished cries drifted from the gloom, and writhing apparitions, souls of the fallen geniuses and giants, manifested in the flickering torchlight. These tormented visions replayed ancient battles in gruesome detail, as though the tower itself fed on their wrath. Ye Cheng steadied his breath and tightened his grip on his weapon. Ahead, the Red Lotus girl led the way, her calm figure the only beacon of serenity amid the swirling phantoms. Together, they prepared to face whatever horrors lay waiting farther below. A suffocating wave of demonic energy bore down on them, its oppressive, corrosive power gnawing at their very souls. Even the mightiest venerable giants risked having their consciousness eroded and their foundational energies shattered by a single touch of this malignant aura. Qi Yang and the others, powerful though they were, felt it seeping into their bones. To hold it at bay, they had no choice but to awaken the god-demon blood slumbering within their veins, channeling its fierce potency timbre or neutralize the taint. Every heartbeat thundered in their chests as dread curled in the pit of their stomachs. They knew all too well why their fear was justified. They'd already ventured to the 200th floor of the Void God Tower. Under ordinary circumstances, no one below the Supreme Venerable Realm could even survive past the 100th floor. Lesser giants had to resurrect at least 80 to 90% of their god-demon blood, reaching near peak fusion, just to endure that height. And yet here they were, twice over, staring down powers so malignant that even their revitalized lifeblood quivered in response. What horrors lay further up this tower, where the air itself seemed to conspire against their existence? Ever since its founding, the Void God Tower's upper reaches have been reserved for the most ancient Emperor Realm cultivators, the old fiends who serve its resident prince, the Taoist of the Void God. Even he, in his periods of seclusion, confines himself to no higher than the 180th floor. And yet now, the Red Lotus Maiden has surpassed them all. Without even pausing at the 180th, 190th, or 200th floors, Honglian Nu has climbed straight to the 210th and shows no sign of stopping. Swish! Qi Yang, Ye Cheng, and the rest stared in astonishment as Honglian Nu came to a sudden halt, pivoted, and raised her hand. A dozen grayish-brown pills flitted off her palm and hovered before them. "These are devil-transforming pills," she announced, her voice calm but insistent. "One apiece. Swallow them now, and we'll press on." Devil-transforming pills? Their hearts pounded. These pills were an exclusive creation of the Void God Tower, reserved for disciples whose cultivation was still too weak to withstand the raw netherworld demonic qi around the Wuyuan cliffs. By harmonizing that energy rather than letting it erode the user's core, the pills allowed lower-level practitioners to survive, and even thrive, amid the tower's forbidding upper floors. Hands trembling, Qi Yang, Ye Cheng, and the others each accepted a pill. As the bitter herbs dissolved on their tongues, they steeled themselves for the next stage of their ascent, one that would carry them ever higher into the tower's legendary Emperor Realm domain. Qi Yang and the others had studied under the Taoist sect for years, but despite their talents, none had ever succeeded in harnessing this artifact's power, at least not until today. Has His Highness already broken through to the 250th level of seclusion? One of them whispered, eyes wide. 250th? Another echoed, puzzled. The Red Lotus girl paused, her crimson robes fluttering like living petals in the mountain breeze. A mocking smile curved her lips as she regarded the trio. "You worthless lot! How dare you guess at His Highness's cultivation? Pathetic." She scoffed and raised the small porcelain vial containing the demon-transforming pill. "Snap it open, swallow the pill, and keep up with me, if you've any hope of catching up at all." Xianxia's jaw clenched. He and his companions had always respected the Red Lotus girl as a senior disciple, but her condescension stung. Still, there was no time for pride. They obeyed, each crushing the pill between their teeth and washing it down with a gulp of cold mountain spring water. Almost at once, a warm surge spread through their veins, sharpening every sense. The Red Lotus girl wasted no words. She spun on her heel and bounded up the narrow stone path. Heart pounding, Xiang and the others followed in her wake, their steps light and swift. By the time the last wisp of incense smoke curled to the sky, they stood before a hidden grotto high on the cliff face. Within, the void god Taoist sat in perfect stillness, draped in pale moonlight. The earlier sting of her ridicule was already forgotten. All that remained was awe at the veiled power surrounding the recluse, and the knowledge that their true trial was only just beginning. Their earlier assumptions about the void god's Taoist had been utterly naive. "Daozi." "Qi," Yang whispered, disbelief etched across his face. Could he really be refining his cultivation down here, 30,000 feet beneath Wuyuan Cliff, on the 300th level of Shushan Tower? A suffocating hush fell over the group as they stared into the swirling expanse before them. Dense, milky mist cloaked an ancient bronze tower, its form suspended in mid-air. All around it, netherworld demonic energies swirled like dark purple flames, turning this 10,000-foot chamber into a realm that resembled the dreaded 9 netherworld yellow spring. At the heart of that unearthly glow sat a lone figure, a young man in a flowing black robe, eyes half closed, perfectly still. Like iron filings around a magnet, the demonic lights drifted inward toward him, as if drawn by some irresistible will. An aura of indescribable power pulsed from his form, rippling through the air and tugging at the hearts of every onlooker. Beside Xiang, the Red Lotus girl's cheeks flamed crimson. A tremor ran through their demigod blood, shaking them to their core. Without warning, they collapsed to their knees, the ground beneath them seeming to quake with the force of that silent command. And at the center of it all, calm, unyielding, and utterly alone, was Ye Cheng. Before Ye Cheng, cloaked in that flowing black robe, no one dared rise to their feet. Every god and demon in the courtyard knelt in unreserved submission, their loyalty pouring from heart and soul. "Daozi!" Xiang's voice cracked, not from fear, but from unbridled excitement. The aura radiating off Ye Cheng, the void god Daozi, was like a tidal wave of power. It brought to mind the ancient legends of the void god tower, where only true, pure-blooded deities could compel such absolute surrender. If these gods and demons bowed so completely to their own Daozi, it could mean only one thing. "Daozi, you've cast off the impurities of your human blood. You've truly ascended, become a god among gods." Chapter 226. Ye Cheng, clad in flowing black robes, slowly opened his eyes and fixed Xiang with a calm, unreadable gaze. He said nothing. Instead, he lifted a single finger and flicked it toward the air. A sharp hiss broke the silence. Swoosh! A solitary drop of dark purple blood arced from his fingertip. In an instant, the vast chamber of the Void God Tower's 300th floor quaked with a thunderous boom, as if the very foundations of reality trembled beneath the weight of that tiny crimson bead. Though minuscule against the torrent of demonic energy swirling around them, the drop pulsed with such overwhelming divine force that it seemed capable of bending eternity itself. Xiang's escort of true disciples watched, jaws agape, the earlier doubts in their hearts vanishing as they beheld the sight. The youth in black robes before them, Ye Cheng, had just revealed his true nature, pure-blooded progeny of both god and demon. "By the Void God's grace," the Daozi whispered, awe coloring his voice. Even he could scarcely believe what he witnessed. Xiang's excitement burst forth. He dropped to his knees, prostrating himself before the shimmering orb of blood. With a fervent expression, he opened his body and spirit to the transcendent ichor. In a matter of breaths, that single drop of god-demon blood wove itself into the lingering fiery demon's essence in Xiang's veins, reshaping and strengthening it in ways he had never dreamed possible. As the final eddies of power settled, the chamber fell silent once more, the air thick with astonishment, and the promise of a new era born from a single, miraculous drop of blood. All of Ye Cheng's wounds from the battle at Beiming had vanished without a trace. What's more, he'd turned misfortune into blessing. His fiery demon war body now boasted over 80% purity, a genuine god-demon physique. Thank you, Daozi, for restoring my bloodline. Ye Cheng knelt heavily on the stone floor, his eyes alight with gratitude. One by one, the other disciples of Taoist Shushen fell to their knees behind him, their gazes fixed on Ye Cheng with unmistakable envy. Spare me your thanks, Shushen Daozi replied, voice calm and measured. I was aware of your plight. Your previous bloodline was crippled. My shame is the greater for having let it weaken. I merely awakened your true potential. But before you proceed, there is one more matter. He inclined his head slightly, then spoke the words that made every face in the chamber grow pale. You must go to the immortal burial pond and meditate facing its wall for 3 full months. At once, Ye Cheng's expression tensed, and the envious looks in the other disciples' eyes vanished as if cut by a blade. The immortal burial pond lay hidden deep within the Wuyuan Cliff's most perilous chasm, a crimson pool said to have formed from the lingering blood of long-dead immortals who were interred there. To undergo its trials was to confront death itself, yet this was the final condition of his full restoration. After 3 months locked in meditation before the wall, even the mightiest giants of the venerable realm risk shattering their sea of consciousness, neither fully human nor ghost, reduced to soulless husks. And though Ye Cheng has just perfected his blazing demon battle body, achieving its legendary great success, that alone does not guarantee he'll survive a full quarter-year of seclusion. Yet in the moment doubt flickered across his eyes, it was banished by a sudden, fierce resolve. A cold, murderous aura erupted around him, crackling like lightning. He fixed his gaze on his companions. If any of you can emerge alive after 3 months, he declared, then swear to join me and break retreat together. Shushen Daozi, the master who has ascended to the Taishu god and demon stage and now treads the world like a living deity, offered a wry half-smile. His gaze drifted toward the Red Lotus maiden standing at his side. In a calm, measured tone, he replied, I too must withdraw for 3 months to consolidate just 1 or 2 more breakthrough. Chiss. Lady Honglian, draft an imperial edict at once, Ye Cheng commanded, his voice low and steady. Announce to the entire world that in 3 months I shall emerge from seclusion and once more traverse the 3,000 realms. He paused, allowing his words to settle like an iron weight. But mark this well, unlike the half-measures of Qi Yang, I will make prodigies bleed, and with their blood I will cleanse the blind eyes of mortals. Only then will they learn that the would-be saints of Xianxia and his brother, even the so-called world-renowned nameless swordsmen, are nothing but ants beneath my heel. When I return to this age, he continued, there will be but one who commands respect, and that is I. Do you understand? There was a palpable power in his tone, a magnetic, domineering certainty that seemed to loom over every corner of the hall. Honglian's heart trembled. She could only gaze up at him with awed loyalty. With a flurry of bows and nods, she raced to fulfill his orders. No sooner had the edict been issued than Shenzhou erupted in turmoil. Across the 3,000 realms, from Yuhang Imperial Palace to the Hutian sect and beyond, every major school bristled with unease. Ye Cheng had not yet revealed himself to the world, yet the old legends of his sect's ruthless might were more than enough to set even the greatest powers on edge. 3 million years ago, during the Great Era, the Tao Master of Shushan Tower cut down nearly every other prodigy who dared challenge him, using their blood and bones to pave his path to immortality. History is littered with such brutality. Who can guarantee that this new virtual god, Tao Master, will be any kinder? Who can promise he'll confine his battles to Yunxi and his brother, instead of unleashing terror on the world? Though the high officials of the Yuhang Imperial Palace fretted at the thought, up on Nalan Peak there was nothing but jubilation. After a long period of seclusion, Nalan Yunshan, the father of the clan's second elder, Nalan Yan, had ridden the returning east wind of the great world and burst into the Daozun realm in one colossal breakthrough. At last, Nalan Peak boasted its own Daozun, confident now that it could stand toe-to-toe with any other Daozun-level power. For 7 days and nights, the Nalan family decked the peak in lanterns, streamers, and joyous music. Even though a Daozun's might in this world can be overhyped, having one among their ranks was reason enough for a celebration that would be remembered for generations. Even the Emperor sect can scarcely defend itself these days, but having a Daozun at its helm is still infinitely better than having no protector at all. A Daozun's power may not be sufficient to push the sect to new heights, but it is more than enough to guarantee the preservation of Nalan Peak and its legacy. Yet at the heart of this celebration stood Nalan Yunshan, and to the disappointment of many, he appeared only on the opening day of the festivities before vanishing entirely. Along with him went his newly elevated son, Nalan Qingyuan, and his daughter, Nalan Yan, both of whom had risen sharply in status the moment their father concluded his period of retreat. They slipped away in secret on a spirit vessel, cutting through the void toward the elusive spirit realm. "We'll soon catch up to Qinger and her husband," exclaimed one of the onlookers. Nalan Yan stood at the prow of the spirit boat, her gaze drifting across the shifting nothingness. She strained to glimpse the distant outline of the spirit realm, though in truth, her current cultivation level was far too low to sense its exact location. Even Nalan Yunshan himself had confessed that he could not pierce such a vast expanse of nothingness to find the spirit realm directly. And so she waited, her anticipation growing with every silent moment. Nalan Yunshan watched his daughter's eager, hopeful eyes and sighed softly. Though part of him was disappointed, after all, in his eyes her talent deserved a match at the imperial level. He had made his decision long ago to stand in her way. Still, with a father's concern, he reached over to smooth her sleeve and said, "Yuaner, be cautious when choosing a husband. I'm not asking you to find someone who will rival your grandfather's mastery of the Tao, but at least look for someone with genuine potential in cultivation." His words made Nalan Qingyuan roll her eyes in gentle exasperation. "Grandpa, honestly, you don't need to worry," she said, smiling and shaking her head. "I have no designs on marriage right now. Cultivation and my family are the only things I truly cherish." As she spoke, her gaze softened with anticipation. She was about to meet her father and brother, and a touch of longing, and yes, a little nervous excitement, flickered in her eyes. "We haven't seen each other in so many years. Do you think my brother and father will even recognize me when I see them again?" Yunshan watched the worry flicker across Qingyuan's face and understood her anxiety all too well. Beside her, Sheng Jiling couldn't resist stepping in to lighten the mood. With a playful grin, she said, "Senior Yunshan, I can vouch for Qingyuan. She used to be completely obsessed with cultivation, but now all she cares about is her brother. Honestly, I don't see her giving a second thought to finding a husband, now or ever." As Qingyuan's closest friend, Jiling knew the hardships that Qingyuan and her aunt Nalan Yan had endured. She had rushed over the moment she heard the two would finally be reunited, eager to share in her friend's long-awaited joy. Jiling's teasing drew a delicate flush to Qingyuan's cheeks, and the tension that had shadowed her moments before began to lift. Yunshan, too, watched Jiling with renewed admiration, appreciating her friend's warmth and support. Nalan Yunshan immediately ceased teasing his granddaughter's heart and turned to Sheng Jiling with a playful gleam in his eye. "All right, enough about Qingyuan," he said, waving a hand. "Let's talk about you, Miss Sheng. What kind of husband do you want? Just tell me your preferences, and I'll see that you get the perfect match." Both Nalan Qingyuan and Sheng Jiling fell silent at his offer, but especially Sheng Jiling. In her mind's eye, Ye Cheng appeared in vivid detail. The first time they'd met on the ancient battlefield, when he'd sundered the evil giant and withered bone emperor with a single stroke. The day he'd entered the arena as an unknown swordsman and, alone, defeated hundreds of demons. And later, his relentless campaign across the war-torn lands, cutting down demons and alien invaders alike. Each of those feats had sent her heart racing. Having witnessed a man like him once, how could any other ever move her so profoundly? Seeing Sheng Jiling's faraway look, Nalan Qingyuan couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy for her friend. After all, the sisters now knew the true identity of His Highness Wu Ming. He was like a dragon in the heavens, utterly beyond their reach. Nalan Qingyuan couldn't help but slip her hand into Sheng Jiling's. Jiling blinked, startled back to reality, and waved her other hand as if brushing away a minor worry. Qingyuan, really? What are you fretting over? I'm perfectly all right, she said breezily. Then her expression turned mischievous. But have you chosen a gift for your brother yet? Show me what you've prepared. When we pause in Ye Cheng to rest, we can pick up a few more offerings for him. It's only proper. As Sheng Jiling and Nalan Qingyuan chattered and teased one another, Nalan Yunshan led the way onward toward the spirit realm. Meanwhile, in the heart of the spirit realm at Jianglin City, Ye Cheng waited anxiously for the arrival of his youngest son. His eyes darted every time the door to his study opened, and then a breathless attendant from Tianshu Pavilion entered with urgent news. The trail of Lady Ye Cheng's birth clan has finally surfaced, the attendant reported, bowing low. It points directly to Yuheng Imperial Palace, specifically to Nalan Peak, one of the palace's 8 sacred summits. Ye Cheng's expression stiffened. Nalan Peak, home to decades of hidden rivalries and long-buried secrets. He inhaled deeply, steeling himself. Whatever lay ahead, he would face it for the sake of his family, and for the little life about to enter the world. Chapter 227. Pavilion Master, Saint Xiang announced, her voice steady. We're 90% certain that your mother came from the Nalanfeng family. In the study's quiet light, Saint Xiang and Saint Yunxiao bowed deeply to Ye Cheng. Their expressions shone with excitement. After days of relentless investigation at his behest, they had finally uncovered his maternal lineage. For devoted disciples, there could be no greater triumph than reuniting their master with his family roots. Ye Cheng felt his own pulse quicken. He raised a hand in acknowledgement. Well done. I can't thank you enough for all your hard work. At his motion, 2 luminous pills drifted from his wide sleeves, each encircled by a coiling golden dragon. The instant they appeared, a powerful aura radiated outward, suffusing the room with waves of energy so potent that Qiyang and Yunxiao instinctively held their breath. Those are Panlong Tiandan, Saint Yunxiao whispered, eyes wide. The Panlong Tiandan is a 6th-tier, advanced alchemical pill, an extraordinarily rare treasure even among saints of the Saint Venerable realm. Qiyang and Yunxiao bowed once more, this time with reverent gratitude. For disciples like them, such a gift was beyond precious. It was the mark of a master's highest favor. Yet in Ye Cheng's mind, their real reward was knowing he was one step closer to the mother he had never known, and to the family whose name might finally explain the mystery of his birth. It's exceedingly rare for a Panlong Tiandan to have such comprehensive effects. The moment a Saint Venerable level cultivator swallows one, it not only purifies his spiritual power and advances his cultivation, but also unleashes a surge of Panlong Qi that tempers his physical form. For anyone at the Saint Venerable stage, one of these pills can push their body beyond its natural limits, giving them a decisive edge over adversaries of equal standing. But the 2 Panlong Tiandans that Master Ye Cheng has bestowed upon us are even more extraordinary. At their core lies the Panlong Dao pattern, and each is surrounded by 7 concentric Dan formations. Under the combined blessing of those 7 patterns, the medicinal potency of these pills is simply awe-inspiring. If Qiang or Yunxiao truly took one, they wouldn't merely sweep aside opponents of the Saint Venerable realm. They would stand a realistic chance against cultivators whose bodies have been honed to Daozun standards. Qiang and Yunxiao stared at the golden capsules, their breaths coming fast. They had learned to expect generosity from their pavilion master, but this gift far exceeded anything they'd imagined. Still, neither could suppress their excitement. "Thank you, Pavilion Master, for this incredible gift," they said, bowing in unison. They secured the Panlong Tiandan in its case with both hands, stowed it carefully for the return trip to Tianshu Pavilion, and then knelt before Ye Cheng in silent respect. "Please, no formalities," he said with a gentle wave. "You two deserve every bit of credit." He helped them to their feet. "Go now and make preparations. Ready the Tianshu warship and activate the teleportation formation at the pavilion. We depart from Qianyu straight for Nalan Peak." He paused, pinching the bridge of his nose as if weighing the hours. "Set the departure for the 7th day. No, make it 3 days from now." A rare spark of anticipation flickered in his eyes. In his former life, He'd been orphaned and knew nothing of his parents. In this world, he'd never laid eyes on his mother, yet his father and the clan elders had lavished him with care and affection. Still, a quiet regret had always lingered. Now at last, he would meet his mother, and discover a younger sister he never knew existed. A swirl of emotions threatened to overwhelm him. He drew a slow breath, shook himself to attention, and murmured under his breath, 3 days, it's finally time. 3 days left. Then hurry and summon the 2 kids back. Ye Cheng's decision to delay their departure by 3 days wasn't because he needed more time to prepare, quite the opposite. His children, Xianxia and Xianxia, simply refused to stay home long. No sooner had they returned to the Gu residence than they slipped away again on some new adventure. Not that Ye Cheng blamed them. In the wake of slaying Luo Xuan, he delved into the late villain's memories and uncovered countless future opportunities. Hidden among them were imperial-grade treasures, as well as a trove of lesser inheritance artifacts. Thanks to those findings, Ye Cheng had made a small fortune. Now he had enough resources to keep the sacred space active for another 6 months, and he'd used his windfall to transform the entire Gu family's prospects. The Jianglan Gu clan was now safeguarded by an imperial-level protective formation and bolstered by 9-tier, 6-level spirit-gathering arrays that resonated in harmony. Although these formations couldn't match the sacred space's rapid cultivation boost, they nonetheless granted every family member a powerful daily enhancement. With everything in place, Ye Cheng merely needed to bring his children home before they set out on the next leg of their journey. Ye Cheng had hardly paused after erecting his protective arrays and activating the 9-layer spirit-gathering formation. He immediately set up a garden for cultivating spirit medicines. From the trove of heirloom treasures he'd claimed, he'd extracted rare spirit medicine seeds and sown them in the freshly consecrated plot. Already, under the steady influx of spiritual energy channeled by his arrays, the seedlings were on the brink of breaking ground. Even so, this fledgling harvest represented less than 1/10 of the vast reserves recorded in Luo Xuan's memory, resources he'd scarcely begun to tap. Meanwhile, the ever-cheerful Yunxi siblings hovered about, hoping for guidance. Amused, Ye Cheng handed them a handful of moderately challenging inheritance techniques, skills straddling the cusp of the spirit realm, and encouraged them to seek out their own trials. Only through real danger and adventure would their power truly mature. But word had arrived from his mother's clan, and Ye Cheng knew he must journey to reunite with his mother and sister. Since his sister Qingshuan was still too frail to travel, he arranged for her to remain under Lianxin's care. The Yunxi siblings, however, would accompany him on the road to his maternal home. With his intentions set, Ye Cheng turned to his father, Gu Yuan, relayed everything he'd learned, and set in motion the search for his mother and sister's whereabouts. There was no time to lose. Ye Cheng slipped away from Jianglan City at dawn, his heart pounding with anticipation. He'd learned enough to know that the lonely grotto chamber, the secret site of his ancestral inheritance, held the answers he sought. Waiting inside were the 2 young acolytes he'd sent ahead to prepare the ritual. They'd discovered the hidden wardings and ensured the place was ready for him. He hadn't told his father, Gu Yuan, all the details. After all, nothing about the Nalan clan's connection to his mother, Nalan Yan, was confirmed. If it turned out to be a misunderstanding, Ye Cheng could handle the disappointment, but his father might not weather such a twist of fate so calmly. Still, rumors had already reached Gu Yuan's ears, and the elder cultivator's usual reserve gave way to barely concealed excitement. As father and son stepped out of the spiritual domain's barrier, they left the familiar mountains behind. Their destination lay beyond the Memnon Void, through a hidden spatial rift that led to Nalan Peak, high above the border of the Han and Qin Empire. From there, Ye Cheng hoped to learn the truth of his mother's origins and claim whatever legacy she had left him. At that same moment, across the vast plains of the Han and Qin Empire, an ear-splitting crack rent the sky above the imperial capital. In an instant, the shimmering tear in reality widened like the mouth of a divine beast. From its depths, a colossal spirit vessel drifted forth, its gilded prow cutting through the void as if borne on an invisible tide. Thousands of cultivators in the capital's courtyards froze in awe. Lanterns trembled on their strings and heartbeats echoed in the sudden hush. No one had ever seen such a magnificent craft or witnessed a spatial breach of this scale within the Empire's storied history. The spirit boat glowed with ethereal runes, each one pulsing like a heartbeat. As it glided closer, its hull bore the crest of the Nalan clan, a pair of crescent moons bound by looping vines. A murmur swept through the crowd. Could they have really returned? Ye Cheng and Gu Yuan, though miles apart, felt the same tremor of destiny. The truth waiting atop Nalan Peak, and the fate of two great families was about to be revealed. Chapter 228. A majestic spiritual vessel, over 1,000 feet long, soared through the sea of clouds like a gleaming white dragon. As it broke through the void, an oppressive aura rolled outward, sending every cultivator in the Han Chin imperial capital into shallow, startled breaths. "Is that a cross-domain skyboat?" someone murmured. "Impossible. That kind of treasure belongs only to an imperial sect. Look at those array diagrams carved on its hull. Not even the Supreme Venerable Sect could have forged something like this." A ripple of apprehension spread among the onlookers. Whispers wove through the crowd. "They've come all the way to Han Chin territory. I just hope they're not here to stir up trouble." Faces paled at the sight of the dragon-like vessel looming overhead. Still, a few cultivators bristled with confidence. "What's there to fear? If they try to provoke the Han Chin Empire unjustly, we've got our own trump cards to play." "Exactly. With Prince Ye Cheng commanding our defenses, anyone foolish enough to bring chaos upon us will be courting death." Few realize that Ye Cheng is in truth the master of the 3,000 realms, the legendary nameless swordsman and undisputed champion of the Tianjiao. Yet even his lesser-known titles are enough to strike awe into the hearts of Han Chin's monks. He is the head of the Tianshu Pavilion, a figure so formidable that even the Saint Lord bows before him, and a cultivator whose might has reached the exalted realm of Tianzun. In the boundless expanse of the spirit realm, such renown renders him all but invincible. No challenger dares court his wrath. A voice, aged and tinged with surprise, drifted from the deck of the skyboat. "What? There are still mighty hermits hiding in Han Chin? And they aren't afraid of us?" The tone hinted at genuine astonishment, but only for a moment. "Well then," the elder continued, "it seems our journey was not in vain." Before the words could fully fade, a second voice, lighter, jubilant, joined in. "Indeed, to find such power in Han Chin, this will be a grand opportunity." Both belong to the Nalan sisters, Nalan Yunshan and Nalan Yan. After guiding their spirit boat through the void to the spirit realm, they deliberately detoured to the Han Chin imperial capital, postponing their rendezvous in Jianglan City to investigate these hidden titans first. Chapter X. What was their real motive? It was nothing more than a show. They intended to trumpet their visit to the Gu family in Jianglan for all to hear. To Nalan Yunshan and his daughter Nalan Yan, the Gu clan was little more than a backwater sect, hardly worth noting in the sprawling Han Chin Empire, let alone the entire spirit realm. True, Nalan Yunshan had recently broken through to the Daozun realm and now wielded even greater authority than the clan's own patriarch, Nalan Ba. But even with such power, he could not simply uproot the entire Gu family and relocate them to Nalan Peak. At best, he could bring back only Gu Yuan, his son-in-law, and Ye Cheng, his grandson, along with a handful of the most promising disciples, to receive advanced training among the Nalan clan's elite. The rest of the Gu family, its elders, servants, and maintaining the clan's roots in Jianglan, would necessarily remain behind in the Han Chin Empire's spiritual territory. That was precisely why they planned this grand announcement. By publicizing their visit, they laid the groundwork to whisk away Gu Yuan, Ye Cheng, and those select disciples when the time came, while also signaling to anyone who might dare threaten the Gu clan that they now enjoyed the full protection of the Nalan family. The Gu clan left in Jianglan would be safe and untouchable. A crisp breeze fluttered the banners above the Nalan pavilion. A young attendant raised a white flag, letting it snap sharply in the wind as the assembled cultivators craned their necks for a better view. "Raise the flag," someone called. The attendant obeyed, lifting the standard high. The pure white cloth bore the silver crest of the Nalan clan, a silent declaration that from this moment on, the Nalan family had honored the Gu clan with their presence, and everyone present understood exactly what that meant. "Send the word," Nalan Yunshan commanded, waving his hand. At once, several of his trusted disciples on the celestial vessel stepped forward to bolster his authority, an unmistakable warning that no one in the spirit domain dared cross the Jianglan Gu family, descendants of the Dao realm. Boom. Boom. One after another, the overwhelming auras of Dao realm cultivators erupted around them, like dragons tearing through the sky. 2 more Dao realm presences flared up, amplifying the display until the very air trembled. Down below in the imperial capital, countless onlookers watched in stunned silence. With a pleased smile, Nalan Yunshan stroked his long beard and unleashed his Daozun-level pressure. His deep voice rolled out across every street and courtyard. "I, Daozun Yunshan, elder of Nalan Peak, one of the 8 celestial peaks under the Yuheng Imperial Palace, have come today to pay my respects to my in-laws and old friends, the Jianglan Gu family. Let this decree travel through Han and Qin and to every sect in the spirit domain. Whoever dares oppress the Jianglan Gu family stands as an enemy of Nalan Peak. I, Yunshan, will fight to the death alongside them." The moment Nalan Yunshan's voice rang out, the entire imperial capital seemed to boil over. Hundreds of cultivators froze in their tracks at his self-introduction. A Daozun Titan, a peak spiritual lord under the direct command of the imperial sect. Such power was beyond anything the Han and Qin cultivators could imagine. For a heartbeat, they were utterly stunned. Then, as they heard his reason for coming, to visit the Jianglan Gu family and formalize a marriage alliance, their shock gave way to confusion. Their expressions said it all. It was as if a revered Taoist master's solemn state visit had somehow become wedding gossip. Am I dreaming? Nalan Yunshan caught the flicker of disbelief on the faces below. He allowed himself a brief frown. This was no time for petty distractions. With the imperial edict secured, the great Tianzhou warship once again unfurled its sails, cutting through the heavens toward Jianglan City. Heralds on the deck announced their impending arrival to every town and village in the 9 provinces. Yet as city after city slipped past beneath them, Nalan Yunshan sensed that something was amiss. It seemed his intuition hadn't deceived him. The monks from the Han and Qin empires showed no surprise at the news of a marriage between the Nalan clan and Prince Ye Cheng of Jianglan. What infuriated Nalan Yunshan even more were the whispered, condescending remarks drifting up from the cultivators below. The Nalan family wants to marry into Jianglan's royal house? What arrogance! Ridiculous. How could they match the prince's pedigree? At the very least, she should be a daughter of the emperor sect. Who's to say she isn't? But the Taoist master of the Nalan clan seems to have already sealed the deal. Poor prince. Each snide comment struck Nalan Yunshan harder than the last. His face grew increasingly tense. "Father, what's wrong? Is something the matter?" Nalan Yan asked softly, concern in her voice as she noticed his stiff posture. Nalan Qingyuan glanced over, worry creasing his brow. Though they all stood firmly in the king realm, even they could hear the scorn rippling through the ranks below, an unmistakable sign that this alliance would be met with more than its fair share of resistance. Nalan Yunshan heard his daughter's worried questions and his granddaughter's anxious glances. He waved them off with a quick hand, masking his surprise and confusion with a light laugh. "It's nothing, just a bit of nerves." Turning away from the Han and Qin monks, he shook his head. How could he take the warnings of a few cloistered men, who'd likely never even set eyes on an emperor, as gospel truth? If anything, breaking into the king's realm in one's 30s or 40s was cause for pride, the proof of being a true dragon soaring in the heavens. His spirits buoyed, Nalan Yunshan pointed ahead, eyes shining. "Yanner, Qingyuan, look, Jianglan City is right before us." "Really?" Nalan Yan and Nalan Qingyuan ran up beside him, faces alight with excitement. Even Sheng Ziling, curiosity piqued, fell in behind them. Together they gazed at the city lifting itself from the sea of clouds, a sight more magnificent and prosperous than it had been before Ye Cheng's rise. But even so, the city still fell short of their expectations. At best, it was just another large metropolis, nothing spectacular. Nalan Yan and Nalan Qingyuan had anticipated as much, so they showed no surprise. Nalan Yunshan, aware of the Gu family's standing and Gu Yecheng's background, likewise feigned calm, though a flicker of disappointment crossed his mind. Typical fatherly pride, he chided himself. Then, without warning, Nalan Yunshan's expression snapped into focus. What? What is that? He muttered, eyes narrowing. He alone, standing at the Daozun realm, detected something the others could not. Through the haze of the city skyline, beneath the grandest estate in Jianglan City, a hidden formation pulsed with power. Magnificent and solemn, its lines of force wove an invisible shield that cloaked the mansion, and indeed the entire city, under its aegis. Straining his senses, Nalan Yunshan's heart skipped a beat. The array's potency dwarfed even Nalan Feng's clan barrier. It put the palace guard formations at Yuhang Imperial Palace to shame. Such refined craftsmanship could only mean one thing. Gu Yecheng's protectors wielded unparalleled skill. And suddenly, the ordinary city before them took on an entirely different awe-inspiring dimension. An emperor-level formation. A Dao-protecting array of true high imperial quality has actually appeared here in Jianglan City. Chapter 229. Nalan Yunshan could hardly believe his eyes. Imperial-grade protective formations are treasures unrivaled even among high-level sects, let alone a mere primary array. And the higher the grade, the more prodigious the energy required to activate it. A formation of this caliber would devour enough spiritual crystals in daily upkeep to bankrupt an ordinary noble-rank sect. Yet here it stood, fully operational in Jianglan City, commanded by an obscure local clan. How could that be? There's something very odd about Jianglan City, he muttered, his brow tightening. He remembered the quiet rumors he'd overheard on his journey, whispers about a certain Gu clan. Could they truly be so formidable? Nalan Yunshan's expression grew solemn. He dared to think it, but only just. Maybe the Gu family really is extraordinary. He couldn't help but stare at Nalan Yan and whisper, Yaner, be honest with me. What is the background of this Gu Cheng you've married? Nalan Yan started, surprise lighting up her eyes. Father, I've told you over and over, my husband comes from absolutely nowhere. There isn't even a minor lord in his family, truly no noble connections at all. Her tone shifted to disappointment as she met her father's gaze. Do you still think I've made the wrong match? Do you want to break our engagement again? Seeing the hurt flash across his daughter's face, Nalan Yunshan's eyes grew moist. He raised his hands in a placating gesture and laughed wryly. What are you talking about, child? Ye Cheng is a grown man now. Even if I have reservations, this marriage must stand. Besides, didn't you say that Gu Ye Cheng treats you kindly? Am I really that pedantic, father? Unfortunately, yes. Nalan Yan nodded, though her brow furrowed in confusion. Then why are you asking? Nalan Yunshan hesitated. He'd almost mentioned the emperor-level formation and the strange chatter between the Han and Qin monks they'd encountered, but it sounded absurd the moment he tried to speak. Instead, he waved a hand dismissively. Oh, nothing. I just was thinking of you. Rising to his feet, he motioned his most trusted lieutenants closer. When we enter the city later, keep a low profile, no ostentation. My lord? Although formally their master, Nalan Yunshan's companions were more like blood brothers forged by war. When Yunshan was gravely wounded years ago, it was their desperate life-or-death struggle that saved him. If they hadn't thrown themselves into the fray, he'd have never walked again, let alone escaped with his life. In his presence, they never hesitated to speak plainly. In the eyes of the clan's revered elders, today was supposed to be a grand homecoming for their future son-in-law. After all, when two great families unite, pomp and ceremony are only fitting, trumpets blaring, drums rolling, banners snapping in the breeze. They had staged just such a reception before. So why, upon reaching the very gates of Jianglan City, had everything been kept so hush-hush? Nalan Yunshan caught the crowd's bewildered stares and offered a weak, apologetic smile. He couldn't afford a lengthy explanation, not here and not now. With a single wave of his hand, he silenced their questions. Reluctantly, the assembled clansmen obeyed. Moments later, the silver skyship, its hull carved in the likeness of a soaring dragon, glided down, settling lightly before Jianglan's main gate. The cultivators gathered around couldn't tear their eyes away. Is that a visitor of His Highness Ye Cheng's? One whispered. Or perhaps a newly appointed vassal of the Gu family, another offered, peering up at the vessel's ornate prow. I've heard the Gu clan commands a real dragon, a third mused. Only an imperial rank vassal could pilot a skyship like that. Meanwhile, Nalan Yan, Nalan Qingyuan, and the others trailing behind Nalan Yunshan exchanged stunned looks. None of them had expected such a majestic craft to usher in their future son-in-law, and none knew quite what to make of it. Before they even entered the city gates, Nalan Yunshan pulled his daughter and granddaughter aside. "Act quietly," he cautioned. "Don't draw attention to yourselves. First we must find the Gu family's residence. Once we know where they are, then, and only then, will we make our true connections known." His daughter, Lady Nalan Yan, and his granddaughter, Nalan Qingyuan, nodded in agreement. Both were already bound by marriage to men they'd never met, and tethered by family obligations they scarcely understood. Obediently, they fell into line behind their grandfather. But no sooner had they passed the first cluster of stalls than the nuns and monks lining the street began to whisper among themselves. The closer Lady Yan and Qingyuan drew, the louder the rumors grew, and with every step, their doubts multiplied. "Did you hear? The Nalan girls are nothing more than vassals to the Gu clan. A vassal family, and the Nalan's brother-in-law sits in his own little pond, convinced he knows the whole world. Imperial rank? Ha! What a joke!" Nalan Yunshan's trusted attendants fanned out protectively around the two women, frowning at the murmurs and side glances. Several of them, eager to challenge these insolent temple folk, were only held back by Nalan Yunshan's firm hand on their arms. "Patience," he hissed. "Not yet." Just then, echoing through the marketplace, a low rumble rolled in from the south. Within moments, the ground beneath Jianglan City trembled. Boom! 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 Even the street vendors paused, staring toward the Gu family's sprawling mansion in the heart of the city. Within its fortified walls, two mighty presences, both brimming with divine emperor-level power, had just made themselves known. In an instant, two middle-aged figures in the Gu family's elder robes appeared on either side, flanking the long street. Behind them, more than a dozen Gu family elders from the Heavenly Emperor and Mysterious Emperor realms fell into formation. Within breaths, they had positioned themselves before Nalan Yunshan and his entourage. "I am eldest elder Gu Cheng," the man on the left announced. "And I am second elder Gu Quan," added the woman on the right. These two were contemporaries of Gu Yuan, and, more importantly, the paternal uncle and aunt of Gu Ye Cheng. Thanks to their close bloodline with Ye Cheng, their fortunes had risen in tandem with his own successive imperial ascensions. Today, each had attained divine emperor perfection and awakened the violet destiny. Though still unable to challenge the true venerable, they stood unrivaled among all others below that lofty rank. As they sensed the skyboat descending outside the city walls, Gu Cheng and Gu Quan, the two most senior figures in the Gu family after Gu Yuan himself, rose without a moment's hesitation, prepared to face whatever challenge approached. Gu Ye Cheng and the Gu family elders stood their ground without a trace of fear, even as they watched Nalan Yunshan's retinue approach. The aura radiating from those cultivators far exceeded anything they'd encountered below the Emperor realm, and if Yunshan intended to do them harm, they might truly be outmatched. But confidence steadied their hearts. "Qing'er may be away from the clan," Gu Quan murmured to no one in particular, "but she left behind a powerful formation that guards us still." A tense silence fell over Jianglan City. Then Gu Ye Cheng, calm and resolute, raised his voice. "Let any who dare harm a Gu family member here understand. You are signing your own death warrant." It wasn't mere bravado. If Nalan Yunshan's party had concealed an emperor-level cultivator among them, the clan's formation would have already sounded its alarm. And even if an emperor did breach their defenses, the Gu family's fully activated protective array was a force no ordinary emperor could hope to overcome. So when Nalan Yunshan strode forward, Gu Ye Cheng, Gu Quan, and the other elders held their ground with unwavering poise, neither cringing nor posturing, as they prepared to meet his challenge head-on. Gu Ye Cheng and Gu Quan curtly bowed to Nalan Yunshan and his party. Gu Ye Cheng's voice was calm but curious as he asked, "May I inquire where you Taoist brothers come from, and what brings you to Jianglan City?" The two venerable elders flanking Nalan Yunshan stirred, about to offer an answer, when a quavering voice broke through the tense air. "Brother Ye Cheng? Sister Quan? It's me, Yaner." "What? Ye Cheng and Gu Quan leapt back in unison. Their eyes locked on the young woman standing before them, and for a heartbeat they simply stared, unable to believe what they were hearing. Then realization flooded their faces, replaced almost instantly by overwhelming joy. Ye Cheng's voice cracked. You're my sister-in-law?" Gu Quan took a cautious step forward, his disbelief giving way to delight. "Sister Yaner? It really is you?" They remembered her clearly. Years ago, when Lady Nalan had married their late brother, Gu Yuan, the Gu family had been in decline. Yet, she had never balked at their reduced fortunes. Even as children, Ye Cheng and Gu Quan had admired her selflessness and warmth. And now here she stood, alive, well, and smiling at them after so many years. Nalanyan's eyes filled with tears as she nodded. "It's me," she repeated softly. "I've longed to see you both again." In that moment, the years of distance and uncertainty melted away. Brother and sister-in-law reunited at last beneath Zhonglin's moonlit sky. They had grown up more like siblings than distant relatives. So when Nalanyan and her younger sister, Qing Yuan, were suddenly called back to the Nalan clan, Gu Yuan was beside himself with grief. Gu Cheng and Quan watched helplessly as their brothers' lives and their little families were torn apart. Their hearts ached just as much, though they tried to keep hope alive. That hope rested on Ye Cheng's astonishing rise. Rumors of infighting and scandal within the Nalan family had begun to leak out. Gu Yuan bristled with anticipation at any scrap of news. Gu Cheng and Gu Quan, while less outwardly eager, still felt excitement stirring in their chests. They prepared at once to set off for the Nalan estate, determined to rescue the two sisters. But before they even left Zhonglin City, fate intervened. A familiar figure came charging through the eastern gate, dust swirling around her feet, her eyes wide with relief. It was Nalanyan, returned at last. "Mother, these two are," she began, then froze. Behind her, Tianqi Square fell silent as everyone's gaze shifted to the two men at her side. Nalan Qingyuan, pale and trembling, hovered just behind her sister, her eyes darting nervously between the newcomers. The sound of her daughter's voice snapped Nalanyan back to herself. With trembling hands, she drew Qingyuan forward and gave a quick, grateful nod toward Gu Cheng and Gu Quan. "Yuaner," she said briskly, "these are your Uncle Gu Cheng and Aunt Gu Quan. Go on, greet them properly." Blushing deeply, Qingyuan managed a small, respectful bow. "Uncle Gu Cheng, Aunt Gu Quan," she murmured. Gu Cheng and Gu Quan stepped forward at once, their faces softening with relief and joy. The long-awaited reunion had begun. Ye Cheng and his brother Gu Quan stood silently, their gazes fixed on Nalan Qingyuan. When the Nalan family had taken her away that day, she'd been no more than an infant swaddled in a cradle. Now she was a graceful young lady standing before them, and the sight stirred 1,000 emotions in their hearts. Words failed them. All they could do was nod again and again. "Yes, yes, Qingyuan, may you live long and well. It's a blessing, truly a blessing." As they exchanged quiet blessings, Nalan Yunshan's closest aides exchanged uneasy glances. A few of them slipped forward to hover behind their master and spoke in hushed tones. "Your Majesty, forgive us, but is there something amiss with the Gu family?" One of the retainers cleared his throat, speaking carefully. "Our young lady has always said the Gu clan was a fading lineage from some distant province. Hardly more than a handful of middling cultivators, with no kings among them. Yet in barely 20 years, they've produced over a dozen archaic emperors and even 2 god-emperor clan elders. Even setting aside the opportunities brought by the Great Era's arrival, less than a year has passed since then. It seems impossible for the Gu family to have absorbed so many high-tier resources so quickly. Doesn't it strike your Majesty as peculiar?" Listening to the steady stream of questions from his officers, Nalan Yunshan's expression grew sharper. Unlike his subordinates, he possessed far greater strength and a keener intuition. The arrival of Ye Cheng and his brother Gu Quan had already confirmed his suspicions. The mysterious imperial formation he detected belonged to the very Gu family masters standing before him. A once-declining minor clan capable of such power? It defied all logic. He turned to his daughter, gaze firm. "Tell me," he said, "what exactly is the situation with the Gu family you chose back then?" Chapter 230. Nalan Yunshan's mind buzzed with questions, but he couldn't find an opening to voice them. Fortunately, Nalan Yan, having just recovered from the shock of their reunion, finally steadied herself. She glanced first at Ye Cheng and Gu Quan standing before them, then at the Gu family elders behind them, all of whom had just broken into the imperial realm. Bewilderment clouded her eyes as she asked, "Brother Ye Cheng, Sister Quan, what's happened to your cultivation?" Ye Cheng and Gu Quan exchanged knowing smiles. "Yaner," Ye Cheng said cryptically, "you'll understand as soon as you return to the clan with us." Grasping Nalan Qingyuan's hand, Gu Quan beamed. "Yuaner, don't be nervous. Come back with us right away. I've already sent word to your father. Even though he's in seclusion, I'm sure he'll emerge the moment he hears you're safe." No sooner had she finished speaking than a thunderous roar split the air from the direction of the Gu family mansion. A torrent of spiritual energy surged heavenward like a great dragon ascending the clouds. Every face in the courtyard turned toward that awe-inspiring sight. The venerables of the Nalan family exchanged startled glances. Each of them had sensed it. That sudden surge of aura had reached Saint Emperor level, and the condensed spiritual power released in the breakthrough rivaled their own. Could the Gu clan really possess a Saint Emperor equal to theirs? Before they could draw any conclusions, a streak of light tore through the air. In the very next moment, the source of that formidable aura stood before the assembled Gu family elders. It was Gu Yuan. Bathed in a golden radiance, Ye Cheng's father looked more awe-inspiring than ever. His innate destiny had just ripened to the coveted golden tier, and the blessings of the holy space had carried him into the Saint Emperor realm a month ago. Now, on the cusp of the Saint Sovereign stage, he had intended to remain hidden until he attained venerable status, yet fate had other plans. "Yuaner!" Gu Yuan's voice cracked with emotion as he hurried forward. You've truly returned." Ye Cheng stood frozen on the threshold, scarcely daring to believe his eyes. Before him were Nalan Yan and their daughter, Nalan Qingyuan, his wife and child, suddenly and miraculously returned. Nalan Yan's gaze locked onto him, bright with longing. Without a hint of hesitation, she crossed the short distance and flung herself into his arms. He enfolded her in a fierce embrace, unwilling to let her go. After a moment's breath, he became aware of a small figure at his side. Nalan Qingyuan, all excitement and happiness, watched her parents with wide, joyful eyes. Her cheeks were flushed, and she didn't seem the slightest bit shy. Gently, Ye Cheng released his wife and knelt down to meet his daughter's gaze. His voice trembled, laced with both hope and wonder. "Qingyuan, it really is you, isn't it?" For the first time, the brave little girl found her defenses melt away. Tears sprang to her eyes, and though countless words clamored on her tongue, none would come. She simply nodded, her whole body shaking with emotion. And in that nod lay all the love and relief of a family reunited. At her slight nod, tears welled in her eyes and spilled down her cheeks like summer rain, and Sheng Jiling beside her couldn't help but blink back tears of his own. Clearing his throat, he said, "Ahem, this hardly seems the place for such a discussion. If I'm not mistaken, your name is Gu Yuan. Why don't we continue at my home?" Patriarch Nalan Yunshan glanced from his daughter to his granddaughter, both of whom were beaming with excitement. A swirl of emotion, joy mingled with a touch of envy, crossed the old man's face before he turned away and cleared his throat again, gently restoring decorum. At his signal, Gu Yuan straightened and recovered his composure. He stepped forward, motioning for Ye Cheng, Gu Quan, and the others to follow. Together they approached, and Ye Cheng and Gu Quan knelt deeply. "We respectfully greet Senior Yunshan," A intoned in unison. Gu Yuan bowed as well, his tone measured and sincere. "Your son-in-law, Gu Yuan, pays his respects to his honored father-in-law." At that title, Nalan Yunshan's eyes flickered with surprise. He held Gu Yuan in a long, appraising gaze, feeling the unmistakable weight of a Dao Zun cultivator's aura emanating from him. Yet it wasn't just the level of his cultivation that impressed the patriarch. It was Gu Yuan's mastery of the late Saint Queen's secret techniques. In an age already brimming with prodigies and martial legends, to have achieved such heights before 50 marked him as truly extraordinary. Ye Cheng's spiritual fluctuations were astonishingly concentrated, and his Taoist foundation so solid that even Nalan Yunshan couldn't help but nod in admiration. "With talent like yours," he said, "it's no wonder the scholars of the Han and Qin empires speak so highly of you, calling you worthy to wed the imperial sect's noble lady Yaner. He rose to his feet. Come, lead me home. I want to see for myself. As he spoke, Nalan Yunshan quietly connected the dots. His Highness of the Gu family he'd heard whispered among Han and Qin monks could be none other than the young man beside him. He had also pieced together the secret behind the imperial formation. A prodigy this gifted must surely be blessed by fate. Before the great opening, such blessings lay hidden. Now that the world had dramatically expanded, countless imperial scions had emerged. For Ye Cheng to refine himself into a holy emperor before turning 50 was nothing short of heroic. It was entirely reasonable that he had drawn great benefit from the formation, though, if Nalan Yunshan admitted it to himself, that very thought made him twinge with envy. Nalan Yunshan nodded thoughtfully. There's no denying Gu Yuan's talent. She truly deserves the title Noble Daughter of the Imperial Clan. Yet a father can't help but believe his own child equal to any rival. Had my daughter not been confined by her brother all these years, I'm certain her achievements would be on par with Gu Yuan's, perhaps even greater. Gu Yuan's brow knitted in confusion. Noble daughter of the Imperial Clan. What's going on? She glanced at her father-in-law, puzzled. True, the Gu family's influence had grown dramatically in recent months, but apart from Ye Cheng, no other senior member had ever shown themselves beyond their own territory. Cultivators in the Han and Qin empires had only heard rumors that Qinger had broken into the venerable realm. No one truly knew the strength of Ye Cheng or the other Gu elders, except for those in nearby Jianglan City who'd caught glimpses of their power. How could the entire Han and Qin have begun speaking of them? Catching Nalan Yunshan's steady gaze, Gu Yuan realized this wasn't the moment to press for answers. She bowed her head, forcing a polite smile, even as her mind raced with questions. Ye Cheng forced his unease down and followed Nalan Yunshan and the others toward the Gu family estate. As they reached the grand entrance, Zhang Lianxin and Lan Qingxuan, having received word of their arrival, stepped out of the mansion, flanked by a small army of elegantly dressed maids. The moment those two figures appeared, every cultivator from the Nalan clan froze. Nalan Yunshan's eyes widened in disbelief. Both Zhang Lianxin and Lan Qingxuan exuded the aura of venerable cultivators, an achievement so rare, even the most gifted disciples of the Yuheng Imperial Palace struggled to reach it. What astonished him further was that no divination could reveal their ages. Drawing on his own imperial scripture training, Yunshan recognized that their youthful appearances weren't the result of simple longevity techniques. They were genuinely young, yet their power placed ordinary imperial princes to shame. If Ye Cheng's talent was already spoken of in the same breath as the imperial princesses, then the prodigious skills of Zhang Lianxin and Lan Qingxuan made even the empire's prized princes seem lacking by comparison. The air itself seemed to hum with the weight of their presence as they advanced to greet the guests. Even the next-generation heirs of the saint-level Taoist sects hardly matched these two in raw talent. These sisters, are that strong? Nalan Qingyuan whispered, awe shining in her eyes as she watched Zhang Lianxin and Lan Qingxuan. Nalan Yan stood equally stunned. She turned to Ye Cheng and asked, Brother Ye Cheng, whose daughters are they? Their prowess is unbelievable. Ye Cheng smiled, gently tussling Qingyuan's hair. They're not the offspring of any senior in the clan, he said. They're our own descendants. Our descendants? Nalan Yan stared at him, astonished. 20 years together, she and Ye Cheng had shared everything. How could he have another family? A soft breeze rustled the courtyard's pines as Qingyuan peered up at her father. You mean Zhang Lianxin and Lan Qingxuan are your children? Ye Cheng met Nalan Yan's incredulous gaze. Yes, they inherited their mother's lineage on one side and mine on the other. Their gift for cultivation surpasses even the great sect's rising stars. Nalan Yan's hand flew to her mouth. After 2 decades of unwavering trust, she struggled to believe that Ye Cheng had kept this secret. Yet the two young women, poised, confident, and radiating power, stood before them as living proof. In that moment, past certainties shattered. The future of the Gu clan, and of the entire sect, would be forever changed by these two extraordinary sisters. Nalan Yan and Nalan Qingyuan both stared in stunned silence at the two women standing before them. Their expressions flipped between shock and bewilderment. Daughters-in-law? Nalanyan finally managed, his voice thick with disbelief. Are the two of you Ye Cheng's wives? Nalan Qingyuan's face drained of color. He stared at the women, so young, yet exuding such overwhelming power, and swallowed hard. My brother's wives, my sisters-in-law? If his sisters-in-law were this formidable, how strong must Gu Ye Cheng be? His heart pounded in awe. Then, where is brother Ye Cheng now? Before anyone could answer, Gu Yuan's eyes darkened as he extended his divine senses skyward. A moment later, he gripped the edge of his robe, raised his head, and pointed toward the eastern horizon. A gentle smile curved his lips. Look, he said softly. Isn't that him? Far off in the crimson dawn, a single silhouette streaked through the clouds, Gu Ye Cheng, descending toward them like a falling star. Chapter 231. Gu Yuan's announcement sent a ripple of surprise through the assembled guests. All eyes swung eastward, where two small figures appeared on the horizon, children running side by side. Two little ones? One of the senior elders exclaimed. Nalan Yunshan squinted into the distance, heart skipping a beat. Whispers spread among the dignitaries. Could those be the grandchildren of Miss Yanner's eldest son? They're simply adorable. And look at that boy, so strikingly handsome. A murmur of admiration coursed through the crowd. Even Nalan Yunshan couldn't help but nod in approval as he studied the pair. A confident young boy with neat dark hair and a bright-eyed girl clutching his sleeve. Nalan Yan, watching from the porch, let a tender smile touch her lips. The siblings seemed to carry their mother's elegance in every gesture. Suddenly, a strong wind swept through the courtyard, rustling banners and tossing hair. Riding the gust came a slender figure who moved like a comet across the sky. It was Gu Ye Cheng, and at his side were the two children. In a heartbeat, he stood before the Nalan gates, steadying them both with a protective hand. Excitement glimmered in Gu Ye Cheng's eyes. On his return journey, he had sensed a rare potent qi rolling in from Tianzhou, an aura of destiny that stirred something deep within him. Now, united once more with his friends and family, he felt the promise of extraordinary days ahead. The moment Gu Ye Cheng set foot in Zhonglin City and saw Nalan Yan standing there with her sister, Nalan Qingyuan, he felt an almost electric pull, the call of shared blood stirring excitement in his chest. Mother? Sister? He whispered, breath-catching. At the sound of his voice, tears brimmed in Nalan Yan's eyes. Seeing her son at last, and a remarkably handsome young man, too, she hurried forward and swept him into a fierce embrace. My child, you've suffered so much all these years, she sobbed. The tenderness in her voice filled Ye Cheng with warmth. Nearby, Nalan Yunshan and the assembled elders wiped away tears of relief as they watched mother and son reunited. Gently, Ye Cheng patted his mother's back. Mother, I've been well, he murmured. Please don't worry. Then he took the hands of the two little ones by his side, Yun Shi and her younger brother. The children, meeting their aunt Nalan Yan for the first time, stared up at her in wide-eyed wonder. Though the children also carried a trace of Nalan blood in their veins, it had long been suppressed by the stronger Gu lineage, and by fate itself, so neither they nor anyone else had sensed it. But in that moment, the hidden blood stirred, drawing the twins to Nalan Yan with irresistible force. Yun Shi and her brother ran forward, their small voices chiming together. Hello, Grandma. At the sound of their cheerful greeting, Nalan Yan's eyes brightened and she laughed, a warm, unrestrained laugh that swept away every shadow of sorrow. She let go of Gu Ye Cheng, swept the two little ones into her arms, and held them close, her heart brimming with affection. Seizing his chance to join the reunion, Gu Ye Cheng bowed deeply to the assembled family. He first inclined his head toward Nalan Yunshan and said, Grandfather, Gu Ye Cheng greets you. Nalan Yunshan returned the bow with a broad, approving smile. Admiration shone in his eyes as he regarded the young man's poised dignity. Nalan Yunshan nodded in approval. As Gu Ye Cheng knelt and bowed, he hurried forward and gently lifted him to his feet. With a warm smile, he chided, Come now, stand up. We're family here. There's no need for such formality. He glanced over at his eldest daughter, Nalan Qingyuan, and beckoned her forward. Qingyuan, you've missed your brother so much, haven't you? Now that he's finally returned, why don't you come greet him? At that, Nalan Yan, who had been about to draw her younger daughter, Yunxi, and the newcomer closer, froze in place. Her gaze flicked between Qingyuan and Qingyuan's friend, Sheng Jiling. Both girls were utterly transfixed by Ye Cheng's presence, their yes, wide with shock and awe, their bodies trembling ever so slightly. Nalan Qingyuan? Jiling? What's happened to you two? Nalan Yan asked, concern lacing her voice. Putting aside her earlier intentions, she turned and softly called her daughter by name. At the sound of their mother's gentle summons, Qingyuan and Jiling blinked, shook off their surprise, and hurriedly composed themselves. Ye Cheng blinked, his composure restored, but his voice still trembling with nervous caution. You're my brother? Lord Wuming? Lord Wuming? At the sound of that name, every member of the Nalan family froze. Even Nalan Yan, just days freed from her long confinement, found herself staring in stunned disbelief at the young man before her. Her eyes widened as she tried to process the impossible. Her own son was the legendary swordsman Wuming. The title resonated across the 3,000 realms and even the distant southern Xuan divine continent. From the brightest rising prodigies to the most powerful elders of the great sects, everyone knew that name. In this age of fierce competition among geniuses and the sudden rise of new heroes, the mysterious swordsman Wuming had astonishingly claimed the top spot on both the Old Realm and New Realm rankings. And now, he stood revealed as Ye Cheng's brother. Just this single demonstration is enough to shake the world. His future achievements will be boundless. Yet before Ye Cheng arrived in Jianglin City, neither Nalan Yunshan nor Nalan Yan truly believed in his potential, no matter how much they loved their clansmen, no matter how fiercely they cherished house and household, father and grandson. They had openly speculated about Ye Cheng's talent, and even at their most generous estimates, they placed him far below Nalan Qingyuan. After all, the Gu family's position was precarious. When Nalan Yan was taken at the Nalan clan's insistence, the Gu household could not even call upon a single king-level power. What sort of bloodline strength could come from such a house? They were merely relieved that it hadn't hindered Ye Cheng's cultivation. But now, in light of Nalan Qingyuan's words, all their prior assumptions collapse into absurdity. Every whispered doubt, every demeaning prediction, they seem laughable. And in this moment of stunned realization, memories of the nameless swordsman's deeds come flooding back. How he cleaved mountain peaks and cleaved winds with a single swing, how he fought on even when every eye said he would fall. If one man could defy all expectations so thoroughly, then perhaps Ye Cheng's destiny truly does lie beyond measure. Nalan Yan drew in a sudden breath, her voice quivering as she glanced at Ye Cheng. Ye Cheng, could you really be the nameless swordsman you honor mentioned, the one who currently sits atop the Earth ranking? Chapter 232. Nalan Yan's voice trembled as she stared at him, while Nalan Yunshan and the others looked on in stunned silence. Ye Cheng's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. He hadn't expected his true identity to be laid bare on the very first day he met his mother and grandfather. He'd hoped his father could ease them into the revelation gradually. But Nalan Qingyuan's exclamation had triggered his own memories of those prodigies, Nalan Qingyuan and Sheng Jiling, who had watched him defeat hundreds of demons atop the human demon platform at the foot of Longhua Mountain. No wonder they recognized him. As Nalan Yan and Nalan Qingyuan exchanged excited, anxious glances, Ye Cheng drew a steadying breath. He met his mother's gaze and nodded. Yes, he said quietly. The name you just spoke is the alias I've been using on my travels. A hushed "oh" rippled through the hall. Ye Cheng squared his shoulders, bracing himself for the next wave of emotion. Nalan Yan's eyes shone with tears and relief. Nalan Yunshan's jaw tightened in surprise. Even the usually impassive Sheng Jiling looked moved. They had come to reconvene the clan, to restore old ties and forge new alliances, and along the way, to find the missing young master, long thought lost. Now, with his secret out in the open, everything would change. Yet in that moment, surrounded by family who barely knew him, Ye Cheng felt a strange sense of peace. His journey was only just beginning, and at last, he would walk it in the light of his true name. In the Gu family's courtyard, the assembled Nalan relatives could barely conceal their astonishment as they stared at Ye Cheng. Even the most senior among them, pillars of the Nalan clan, found themselves exhaling in disbelief. Nalan Yan and her daughter, Nalan Qingyuan, exchanged glances that shimmered with equal parts pride and embarrassment. Before setting out for the Gu household, they had labored over suitable gifts for both Ye Cheng and his elder brother, Gu Yuan. In earnest, they collected all manner of finely crafted elixirs, jade talismans, and precious scrolls, treasures fit for low to mid-level cultivators. Now, standing face-to-face with Ye Cheng, whose mere presence radiated the strength of an Imperial Realm master, they realized in horror that none of their offerings were remotely adequate. "How could we have been so naive?" Qing Yuan murmured, her cheeks flushed. "He's an Imperial Realm powerhouse. These trifles won't do." Nalanyan forced a laugh that barely hid her shame. "We'll just have to think of something grander, quickly." At their side, Nalan Yunshan quietly surveyed his daughter and granddaughter. Over the past weeks, he had watched them meticulously gather gifts, and he understood the embarrassment that now twisted their expressions. Fortunately, having recently ascended to the Daozun realm, he possessed not only the wisdom to guide them, but also the resources to remedy the situation. With a subtle nod, the venerable patriarch stepped forward. "Let me handle this," he said in a measured tone. "There is still time to present Ye Cheng with a gift worthy of his station." As the Nalan family's mortal anxieties drifted away on the breeze, a new sense of purpose took root. Together, they would ensure that the greatest guest in the Gu courtyard received an offering befitting his transcendent prowess. Though time was pressing, and there'd been no chance to ready anything, Nalan Yunshan still had countless treasures stored in his spirit ring. He knew Ye Cheng's predicament left little room for error, so rather than offering a spiritual tool or weapon, he simply sent out a probing divine thought into the ring's depths. In the next instant, he drew forth a single pill suffused with starlight, an object so radiant that every eye in the audience snapped to attention. The pill was pale sky blue and perfectly spherical, its glass-like surface etched with delicate Taoist patterns. Within it, brilliant motes of light swirled like a miniature galaxy. Outside, a soft cerulean aura shimmered, condensing into a thin ring of spiritual energy that revolved around the pill in silent orbit. As soon as it appeared, its power was unmistakable. The air itself seemed to hum with purity and potency. Even the Gu family's royal-level cultivators, renowned throughout the region for their crystal-clear spiritual senses, paused in astonishment. Holding the pill carefully between thumb and forefinger, Nalan Yunshan let its radiance wash over him, then looked up at Ye Cheng. "This," he said, "is the celestial star elixir. It will restore your spirit foundation and bolster your cultivation by several levels. Take it without hesitation." A hush fell over the hall. Everyone knew that such an elixir was rarer than jade and infinitely more precious. Yet for Ye Cheng, in the face of imminent danger, it might well mean the difference between life and death. The aura emanating from the elixir was astonishing, stronger than even Nalan Yunshan's most seasoned venerable realm attendants. It was clearly a 6th-grade pill, etched with intricate alchemical runes. "Ye Cheng," Nalan Yunshan said, his gaze gentle yet earnest, "this is our first time meeting, and I have little of value to offer someone of your talent. With your reputation, I'm sure the Imperial soldiers are already searching for you, so I insist you take this." He reached into his robes and produced a small, luminescent pill. "This is the Star Convergence pill. While it may not be rare among venerables or heavenly venerables, its power is formidable. For cultivators below the venerable realm, the starlight it contains can temper your Tao foundation, drastically accelerating your breakthrough." He smiled, pride shining in his eyes. "Consider it a gift from me, your mother, and your sister. Don't mistake our generosity for anything less than heartfelt." With a respectful bow, Nalan Yunshan pressed the pill into Ye Cheng's open palm. Ye Cheng accepted it reverently, marveling at the faint starlight swirling within the translucent orb. Yunxi and her sister, drawn by its glow, edged closer, their eyes wide with wonder. As Nalan Yunshan described the Jufa pill's virtues, everyone found themselves strangely enchanted by its delicate form and inner glow, as if a swirl of starlight were frozen in crystalline amber. They didn't truly need it, but its sheer beauty was impossible to resist, especially for the two children. "Great-grandfather! Great-grandfather!" Gu Yunxi rushed forward, eyes shining. "Could you please give the pill to us instead of Daddy? We'll help Grandpa deliver it to him as a gift." At first, Yunxi had meant to ask her father directly, but she still remembered how recently she and her brother had begged him for permission to travel, only to be turned down. If she now appealed to him for the precious pill, he would surely refuse out of principle, no matter how much he adored her. So she decided to bypass him altogether and make her case straight to their great-grandfather. With practiced innocence, Yunxi laid on the charm. She even dragged her elder brother, Ye Cheng, to her side, though he looked mildly embarrassed, urging him to back up her plea. Together, the two stood before Nalan Yunshan, their wide eyes and hopeful smiles an almost impossible display of sibling teamwork. Gu Yunxi's eyes gleamed when she saw her brother Ye Cheng hesitate. In an instant, she sent a tiny spark of lightning crackling behind him. Ye Cheng jumped in surprise, and not daring to stay silent any longer, blurted out, "Yes, great-grandfather. Let me help you choose a gift for father. If you're giving out pills, please, this one should be mine." His mind racing, Ye Cheng seized on an excuse. "Besides," he added quickly, "didn't you say this pill is only suitable for cultivators below the venerable level? Father's already a venerable. He can't use it. But I could, right now. If I had this pill, I could break through." The old man leaned forward, studying the two children as they knelt before him, eyes bright with hope. His stern features softened just enough to reveal a trace of sentiment. "Oh, Xier, you're so eager for it? Very well. When I return to Nalan Peak, I'll refine another pill just for you. Wait a moment, though." He chuckled inwardly at their pleading expressions. Though he had intended to be strict, his heart was half melted by their earnest faces, and he couldn't help but indulge them. Nalan Yunshan, Nalan Yan, Nalan Qingyuan, Sheng Jiling, and all of the Nalan family's most trusted disciples froze in place. Every one of them turned to Ye Cheng, eyes wide with disbelief. "Chener, what was that you just said?" Nalan Qingyuan's voice quavered as he stared at Ye Cheng. "You're telling me my father can no longer refine the star-gathering pill?" Nalan Yunshan's question hung in the air, heavy with shock. Chapter 233. Yes, yes, father has long since become a venerable. Silence fell over Nalan Yunshan and the other elders. Gu Qingchen's confident tone collapsed into uncertainty as he backed away, convinced he'd misspoken. He turned to his sister, voice quivering. "Sister, did I say that right?" Gu Yunxi bit her lip, her own confidence shaken. From her perspective, having just ascended to the Saint Emperor realm, it seemed only natural that father would be a venerable, or even a heavenly venerable by now. Why, then, did the senior cultivators look as if they'd witnessed some impossible miracle? The two children exchanged anxious glances toward their father, who stood apart from the assembly. Catching their worried expressions, Ye Cheng smiled wryly. He stepped forward, gently ruffling their hair in reassurance, then addressed Nalan Yunshan with calm authority. "Grandfather, Qingchen and Yunxi are correct. I have indeed reached the venerable realm." With that, Ye Cheng released his cultivation aura. In an instant, a vast, undulating pressure rolled outward, unmistakably the signature might of a perfected heavenly venerable. The assembled elders felt their chests tighten and their spirits reel under the overwhelming force. Even Nalan Yunshan's normally impassive features revealed shocked admiration as the true depth of Ye Cheng's power became undeniable. All eyes in the Nalan residence went wide. Every member of the family held their breath. He's at the heavenly venerable realm. Tianzun perfection. Even Nalan Yunshan and his most trusted attendant paled at the announcement. They stared at Ye Cheng in stunned disbelief, as though the brilliant light emanating from him had suddenly taken physical form. Nalan Yan's own eyes grew round in shock. She scarcely dared trust what her divine senses were telling her. Only when the initial astonishment faded did her face break into a look of unabashed pride. At last she whispered to Gu Yuan, "So Yuan Gare, all of this, your newfound power, comes from Ye Cheng's breakthrough into the Emperor realm, reaching the venerable stage, and restoring your family's bloodline." Gu Yuan nodded. An hour later, calm had returned. Guests and retainers drifted off to one side, leaving Nalan Yan seated in quiet conversation with Gu Yuan in the grand hall of the Gu family mansion. As Gu Yuan recounted the Gu clan's recent trials and triumphs, especially the astonishing rise of his son Ye Cheng, Nalan Yan's expression shifted between sorrow and joy. She was grieved, he told her, to think how close the Gu family had come to ruin before Ye Cheng's dramatic emergence. Without his sudden ascent, their clan might have been wiped out entirely. Yet in the same breath, she brimmed with pride, because it was precisely Ye Cheng's arrival, his unanticipated strength, that had pulled them back from the brink and ensured the Gu name would endure. Nalan Yan leaned forward, her voice soft but filled with warmth. Your son is truly remarkable, Gu Yuan. I'm honored to witness his power, and to know that, thanks to him, your family's legacy will live on. Gu Yuan offered a humble bow. My lordship, I look forward to the day when our two families stand side by side once more, stronger than ever. Nalan Yan returned his bow, and in that shared moment, both families found new hope in the brilliance of Ye Cheng's destiny. Nalan Qingyuan and Sheng Jiling sat side by side, each lost in their own whirlwind of emotion. Qingyuan couldn't help but swell with pride at Ye Cheng's remarkable achievements. Beside her, Jiling was in an even more tumultuous state. After all, she'd fallen head over heels for the mysterious nameless swordsman. Having once vowed never to marry, she never imagined she would chance upon her idol again simply by tagging along to help a friend reconnect with relatives. Her mind went completely blank. If Qingyuan hadn't gently dragged her forward, Jiling would still be standing dumbfounded in the courtyard, not daring to step inside. Qingyuan herself admired the nameless swordsman's extraordinary prowess, though not out of romantic longing. She still recalled the thunderous clash on the ancient battlefield when he rose to the human-demon realm with effortless grace. Across the 3,000 realms, countless geniuses, regardless of gender, had already made Ye Cheng the focus of their admiration and pursuit. Naturally, Qingyuan shared that respect, even if she never allowed herself to dwell on it too deeply. In the blink of an eye, her idol stood before her, and he was now her brother. Brother? Nalan Qingyuan's voice drifted out in a soft question as Ye Cheng stepped out from the courtyard. She immediately looked up, caught off guard by his presence, and felt her cheeks burn. She dropped her gaze, then lifted it again, forcing an awkward smile, and in that quick shuffle, her blush spread higher and higher until her ears felt hot. Ye Cheng couldn't help but laugh at her embarrassment. Qingyuan, relax. This is your home. No need for formalities. The gentle warmth in his voice washed away her tension. As she finally exhaled, she noticed he was carrying several ornate brocade boxes. Curiosity sparked in her chest as she stared at them. Catching her interest, Ye Cheng selected a medium-sized lavender box and handed it to her. I brought these as gifts for Mother, and for you. This one's for you, Qingyuan. Ye Cheng distributed the remaining brocade boxes, handing one to Nalan Yan, another to Nalan Yunshan, and even setting aside one for Sheng Jiling. He remembered his younger sister, Yuaner. Though she'd been strangely silent since coming home, he knew from their journey through the spirit realm together with Sheng Jiling that they shared a deep bond. Ye Cheng wouldn't play favorites. Besides, ever since the Great World appeared and he defeated Luo Xuan, piecing together the remnants of his soul memories, Ye Cheng had accumulated plenty of treasures. Rare weapons weren't like fleeting grains of sand, nor were potent elixirs as scarce as wild cabbage. He had more than enough to share with friends and family. Holding the brocade boxes in their hands, Nalan Yan, Nalan Yunshan, and Nalan Qingyuan exchanged curious glances. Nalan Yunshan's eyes widened as he peered through his spiritual perception into the brocade box. From within, a torrent of untainted life essence surged, a purity and power that eclipsed even the spiritual energy rippling through his dantian as a Dao Zun. Ye Cheng stepped forward, an unreadable smile playing at his lips. Brother Yunshan, you should see this. With a soft click, he lifted the lid. A single translucent orb, no larger than a clenched fist, floated up. It was as clear as polished jade, yet alive with shifting dragon-shaped phantoms that coiled around its core. A low, resonant roar whispered from within the sphere. The moment it touched the ambient spiritual aura, fine lines of dark gold began to etch themselves across its surface. 1, 2, 3, until 9 intricate Dao patterns glowed in a perfect circle. Every member of the Nalan clan's inner circle, masters and elite disciples alike, held their breath. Even the normally composed Nalan Yunshan felt his heart pound against his ribs. 9-patterned precious pill, he whispered, disbelief in his voice. It's real. Ye Cheng inclined his head. With these 9 patterns, its potency far exceeds any ordinary elixir. One pill like this can shatter cultivation bottlenecks or heal wounds that should be fatal. Silence fell over the courtyard as the gathered cultivators absorbed the gravity of what they'd just witnessed. The legends of the 9 patterns were many, but none had ever laid eyes on one, until now. And in Ye Cheng's open brocade box floated proof that the impossible had become reality. For elixirs of the same grade, each additional pattern boosts its potency by 20 to 30% over an unpatterned version. And the more patterns there are, the more extreme the increase. An elixir adorned with 9 patterns can be 10 or even 100 times more effective than one without any. In practical terms, though the pill Ye Cheng withdrew was officially only a 6th-level primary elixir, its 9 elaborate patterns elevated its power to rival the very best 6th-level brews that Daozun titans clash over. It was no surprise, then, that the instant the elixir surfaced from its brocade box, every member of the Nalan clan recognized its name. "That's one of the finest 6th-level elixirs in existence," someone whispered. "Legend has it," another added, "that even 100 years of guidance from a supreme Taoist master couldn't match the cultivation boost this pill provides." Chapter 234, The Dragon Spirit Heaven Pill. Just one of these could spare a Taoist master a century of grueling cultivation, possibly even more. Coupled with the blessing of the 9 pill patterns, it ranked among the rarest, most coveted treasures in the entire cultivation world. If it were to appear at auction, even Emperor Realm powerhouses would wage war over it. For an Emperor Realm cultivator, the medicinal potency of a single Dragon Spirit Heaven pill was nothing short of miraculous. It could shave nearly 100 years off one's practice. And for someone of Grandmaster Nalan Yunshan's caliber, if he managed to fully absorb its power, breaking through to the pinnacle of the Taoist stage would be almost effortless, even if it didn't vault him outright into the Emperor Realm. And yet his grandson had the audacity to present such a pill to him as a mere gift? "Ye Cheng, this gift is far too extravagant," Nalan Yunshan said, his voice wavering with emotion. "I can't possibly accept something so precious." Ye Cheng smiled and waved a hand dismissively. "Grandpa, please don't refuse, it's nothing to me." Across the hall, Nalan Yan and Nalan Qingyuan each lifted the lids of their brocade boxes, and both could scarcely suppress cries of astonishment. The sudden exclamation drew the attention of Nalan Yunshan and the venerables seated around him. They looked up in unison, only to be struck speechless by what lay inside Nalan Yan's offering. Nestled in velvet was an imperial-grade botanical elixir, a single flower that gleamed like moonlight. Its petals curved like a perfect orchid's, each one traced with intricate, undulating ley-line patterns. The instant the box opened, a heady floral perfume spilled forth, flooding the Gu family's main hall. Every cultivator present paused, breath caught by the wondrous scent. With a single inhalation, their spirits brightened, their minds sharpened. Cultivation mysteries they had wrestled with for years, barriers they could neither scale nor comprehend, suddenly loosened at the flower's subtle influence. In that moment, it was clear that even the faintest trace of this extraordinary fragrance could unlock the deepest secrets of their art. The assembled cultivators fell silent as the delicate, orchid-like blossom was lifted into view. That's the Moon Spirit Yunshen flower," someone whispered, awe in their voice. "A 7th-tier, high-grade imperial medicine renowned for restoring both soul and body. Even most 7th-tier pills can't match its potency." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The Nalan family's disciples exchanged stunned glances, none more so than Nalan Yunshan, whose jaw dropped. Only moments ago, Ye Cheng had astonished them with the Dragon Spirit Heaven pill. Now he'd bested himself by unveiling this far rarer treasure. From across the courtyard, Nalan Qingyuan snapped open his own brocade box in a rush of envy. "I'll wager it's another imperial medicine," he muttered, unable to hide his excitement. Murmurs rose to outright acclaim. An elderly master stepped forward, bowing respectfully toward Ye Cheng. "Young Master Ye Cheng, only you could produce such marvels. You are truly the greatest genius in all 3,000 realms. No, in all Nanshuan Shenzhou." Amid the clamor of praise and astonishment, Ye Cheng simply held the Moon Spirit Yunshen flower aloft, his expression calm as the petals caught the sunlight, shimmering like liquid moonlight. The clan elders of the Nalan family whispered among themselves in awe, though their minds were strangely dulled. First, they had witnessed the dragon spirit pill, an imperial-grade miracle. Then came the 7th-tier miracle herb, the genuine imperial moon spirit flower. They were certain nothing could astonish them anymore. Yet, as they watched Nalan Qingyuan open a brocade box, their composure shattered. Out leaped a banner stitched with countless stars, each gleaming with its own inner light. As if alive, the stars shivered and shifted under the weight of the world's spiritual energies. Invisible ripples, power pulsed outward from the banner, pressing on every chest in the hall. Even these seasoned elders of the Nalan family found themselves struggling to draw a steady breath. Even Nalan Yunshan, now a Dao Zun, could not help but feel crushed by the aura pouring off the star banner. His heart tightened. There was no mistaking it. This truly was an imperial weapon. Ye Cheng met his astonished gaze with a calm smile. "I recovered this star banner from an old treasure vault," he explained. "Although it's classified as an imperial weapon, its primary function is defensive. It envelops the bearer in an almost impenetrable shield, but its offensive might is relatively weak." He turned to his younger sister, Gu Qingchen, whose eyes shone with surprise, and gently ruffled her hair. "It won't do me much good," he said softly, "but Qingchen, your cultivation is still developing. Keep this banner with you when you travel. It will protect you." In truth, Ye Cheng was withholding the full story. The star banner's true power was so great that none of them, neither he nor Gu Qingchen, Gu Yunxi, or even Zhang Lianxin, were strong enough to unlock all of its potential. According to the coordinates stored in Luoshuan's memories, far more formidable imperial armories and elixir caches lie hidden across the realms, but they will not awaken for another year, or perhaps even several. Until then, the star banner would serve as their best guardian on every journey. However, gaining access to those hidden treasure vaults wasn't as simple as stumbling across them. Only by deliberately activating their secret seals could someone slip inside. And even then, the trials within were far more perilous than those guarding most newly surfaced relics. Although Luoshuan knew exactly when and where to find them, he never dared attempt it. His strength simply wasn't enough to guarantee both entry and a safe return. Ye Cheng, by contrast, had no such reservations. True, he couldn't spare the time to chase treasures on the fringes of the 3,000 realms, but for those within his reach, he showed no hesitation. In the span of just a few months, he had already collected well over a dozen imperial-grade weapons and remedies. And it wasn't just him who benefited. Zhang Lianxin, Lan Qingxuan, and Yun Shi each now wielded their own divine armaments. Even his father, Gu Yuan, possessed 2 imperial weapons for personal defense. On top of that, Ye Cheng had fortified the clan's stronghold with a powerful protective formation, secretly reinforced by 3 concealed imperial artifacts designed to suppress any unauthorized intrusion. Their concealment was so complete that not even Nalan Yunshan had the slightest inkling of their existence. Honestly, Ye Cheng felt that simply handing his sister the starry banner to ward off danger was hardly enough. If this weren't their first reunion, he worried that showering his mother and sister with too many gifts might overwhelm them. The truth was, he longed to arm every one of his loved ones in this life with his entire arsenal. He met his family's eyes and spoke quietly. "Yuaner, mother, grandfather, please don't think these presents are precious in themselves. They're merely tokens. You are what matters most to me." Standing beside him, Sheng Jiling listened closely. For a moment, everyone was so swept up in Ye Cheng's earnest words that they forgot the brocade boxes they'd each brought. At last Nalan Qingyuan, and grandfather Nalan Yunshan exchanged glances and, with heartfelt smiles, accepted the gifts. As Nalan and Qingyuan gently closed their boxes, a sudden memory made them pause. They had stashed away their own offerings for Ye Cheng and his companion, Gu Yuan, in their storage pouches, and now they realized they hadn't presented them yet. Mother and daughter exchanged amused looks. "Mother? Yuaner?" Ye Cheng asked, noticing their shared expression. "What is it?" Ye Cheng beamed when he saw his grandfather and the others finally accept the gifts. Concerned, he asked, "Is so, mething wrong?" Nalan waved her hand, a fond smile on her lips. "Nothing to worry about, Ye Cheng. It's just seeing the presents you prepared for us, and those your mother and sister sent for you and your father. It feels almost too generous." At her words, Nalan Yunshan's weathered face flushed with embarrassment. He remembered how, upon arriving, he had loudly proclaimed through the streets that he would protect his son-in-law and grandson from any harm. And now, confronted with the sheer scale of the Gu family's generosity, he couldn't help but grin bitterly. To think that one day the Nalan clan might rely on the Gu family's protection, given their vast resources and standing, that would truly be the ultimate show of strength. The old patriarch's feelings swirled as he met Ye Cheng's eager gaze. The boy's eyes sparkled at the mention of the gifts Nalan Yan and Nalan Qingyuan had brought. In that moment, Nalan Yunshan felt pride, gratitude, and a hint of awe all at once. Nalan Yan and her elder daughter, Nalan Qingyuan, finally produced their gifts with a trace of nervousness. Ye Cheng examined the little parcels in surprise. They weren't grand treasures, only low-rank cultivation aids, but each item was exceptionally rare. Even the highest-ranking Venerable Realm experts would spend months, perhaps years, hunting them down. Despite their modest grade, the thought behind such painstakingly gathered offerings moved him deeply. Ye Cheng's father, Gu Yuan, smiled warmly as he watched his son and wife handle the presents. "Yan, Qingyuan," he said, voice gentle, "you needn't be embarrassed. These are far more precious than you think." He turned to his daughter. Had Qingyuan been younger, these gifts would have given her a tremendous boost in her cultivation. At Gu Yuan's words, both mother and daughter visibly relaxed. Ye Cheng lifted one of the small jade vials and turned it over in his hand, curiosity lighting his eyes. He glanced at Qingyuan, hesitated for only a moment, then spoke. "Qingyuan, I've been meaning to ask ever since we met, why don't you share any of our Gu blood?" A tense silence fell over the room as Qingyuan stared back, startled by the question. Outside, the late afternoon sun filtered through papered windows, casting golden patterns on the lacquered floorboards and on the unspoken mystery between half-siblings. Chapter 235. When Ye Cheng asked the question, Nalan Qingyuan's composure faltered, and Nalan Yunshan beside him shifted uncomfortably. Finally, Yunshan cleared his throat and explained, "We needed to guarantee Qingyuan's potential, so we took some of the Gu family's blood." At once, those standing nearby, Ye Cheng's father, Gu Yuan, and his uncle and aunt, Gu Chang and Gu Quan, were thunderstruck. Ever since Ye Cheng ascended to the imperial throne, the cultivation and power of everyone in the Gu clan had soared as if launched by a rocket. Yet even they paled compared to the astonishing gains in the distant Kangming branch. Both the Kangming patriarch and the current head of the Gu family there, Gu Wanli, had seen their abilities surge. Most remarkable of all was the Kangming patriarch. Just half a month ago, word arrived that he had perfected the Saint Emperor realm and stood ready to enter the venerable level at any moment. Lesser branches of the family, too, had felt the uplift in their bloodlines. The very thought made the Gu family's emergence seem less like a miracle and more like a concerted transfer of power, one in which Nalan Qingyuan had played a critical and now perplexing role. If Nalan Qingyuan's bloodline were still intact, just think how much her talent could have flourished, said Ye Cheng, frowning. She'd likely have broken through into the Heavenly Emperor realm by now. The Heavenly Emperor realm? Nalan Yan's voice trembled with astonishment. Across the 3,000 realms, even in the Golden Age, prodigies of Qingyuan's youth seldom reached that level. Those who did were heirs personally recognized by the greatest sects, Yuheng Imperial Palace, Guardian Heaven Sect, and the like. Nalan Qingyuan stared at Ye Cheng, her mind reeling. If someone had never severed her lineage, could she truly have become one of those chosen successors? The very idea left her momentarily dazed. Nalan Yunshan, standing nearby, clenched his fist so tightly his knuckles turned white. His emotions twisted into anger and regret. He ground out, "That foolish brother of mine." He refused to call him Big Brother any longer. He pounded his chest and stamped his feet, lamenting the chance he'd lost. Even Ye Cheng's brow furrowed with concern at the display of anguish. As the newly appointed patriarch charged with reviving the Gu family, Ye Cheng held extraordinary power. At his command, he could strip any member of their Gu bloodline, or, in turn, invest a portion of his own life essence to elevate a relative's bloodline. rewarding outstanding service with enhanced talent and destiny. Yet in his sister Nalan Qingyun's case, the entire Gu heritage had been forcibly drawn out. Ye Cheng frowned, uncertainty creasing his brow. "Did the Nalan family take it all back then, and keep none of it?" he asked, rubbing his temples. Nalan Yunshan started at the question and glanced nervously at Nalan Qingyuan. At the time of Elder Nalan Ba's extraction, Yunshan had been comatose and their father under house arrest. Only Qingyuan had witnessed the event. But Nalan Qingyuan looked equally bewildered. When Elder Nalan Ba returned her to the Nalan estate, she'd been nothing more than an infant in swaddling clothes. Her earliest memories were too fragmented to recall what had happened. "I suppose our first stop will have to be the Nalan clan." Ye Cheng frowned at the thought. Dealing with the Nalan family, especially a stranger like Nalan Bai, felt more trouble than it was worth. Yet he knew the truth. The one who abducted Mother and Yuaner, the one who'd held her captive in the Nalan ancestral grounds for all those years, must be my own grandfather, someone I've never even met. Cold light sparked in Ye Cheng's eyes. Nalan Yan caught that chill and paled. She already harbored misgivings about Nalan Bai, but she didn't want her son rushing in with blood on his hands. "Ye Cheng, please, don't act recklessly." He offered her a reassuring half-smile and brushed a hand through his hair. "Relax, Mother. I'm not here to spill ball, ooed needlessly. However, when it comes to Qingyuan's inherited bloodline, I can disregard the other branches of the Nalan family. What I must have is an audience with your grandfather." Ye Cheng's gaze was steady. In theory, he could extract traces of the Gu clan's bloodline from any sinner who bore it, then use those remnants as a template, and by sacrificing a portion of his own life essence and blood, help Nalan Qingyuan reshape the Gu lineage within her. But that method was a workaround, a second-best solution that yielded only marginal gains compared to the true, original bloodline she once possessed. If he could restore Qingyuan's authentic Gu heritage, her power would blossom far more strongly than by any artificial reconstruction. If restoring her original bloodline fails, Ye Cheng added, voice low but resolute, we'll fall back on Plan B, but first, I must meet your grandfather. At his words, Nalan Yan's defiant posture finally relaxed. He stepped aside, clearing the path. Nalan Yunshan, who had long harbored resentment toward his eldest brother's reckless behavior, couldn't hide his surprise. In the past, he'd turned a blind eye because of family loyalty. But now, seeing Ye Cheng poised to challenge Nalan Ba himself, Yunshan felt a flicker of approval. Silence stretched between them for a heartbeat. Then, steeling himself, Nalan Yan led the way deeper into the Nalan ancestral hall, the weight of their mission pressing on every step. Ye Cheng followed, determined. For Qingyuan's sake, he would stop at nothing to reclaim what was rightfully hers. Nalan Yunshan's eyes lit up with delight. He eagerly rubbed his hands together and called out, "Ye Cheng, would you like me to come along? My Tianzhou ship is waiting just outside the city walls." Ye Cheng offered a faint smile and shook his head, though his tone was warm. "Of course, Grandpa. I'd be happy for you, Mother, Yuaner, and Father to join us, but we won't need the Tianzhou." He paused, considering logistics. That ship would take days to arrive, and with only a few of us traveling, there's a much quicker way. With a flick of his hand, he traced an arc in the air. In an instant, a small vessel materialized before them, a miniature building ship, barely 10 feet tall, its form a perfect replica of the grand ships seen on the river, complete with pavilions and towers, carved beams, and painted eaves. Along its polished hull, intricate Taoist array designs glowed with crystalline radiance, casting a gentle, lingering light over the courtyard. Nalan Yunshan leaned forward, eyes wide. "Where did that come from?" Ye Cheng gave him a confident nod. "This is one of my personal transports. It draws on a condensed spatial array, fast, reliable, and perfectly suited for a family journey. Shall we board?" It looked like a swirling vortex, and at once a perfectly still mirror lake. Its surface captured and reflected the entire structure of the shipbuilding hall with an almost magical clarity. The moment the sculpture was unveiled, every eye in the room was drawn to it. As if ensnared, the onlookers found their attention, and their very spirits, completely captivated by its beauty. Chapter 236, a moment of stunned silence fell over the courtyard before Nalan Yunshan, by far the most powerful cultivator among them, was the first to recover. His voice trembled as he studied the vessel before them. What sort of divine artifact is this? It's unbelievable. He recalled how, only seconds ago, the ship's formation had reached out and beckoned his soul into a hidden realm, an otherworldly pocket of absolute stillness, so alluring he almost lost himself in its embrace. Had a mysterious bell not tolled at the last instant, he feared his spirit would have been claimed forever. At his side, Nalan Yan and Nalan Qingyuan blinked and shook themselves back to reality, their eyes fixed on the same gleaming hull, its surface carved with swirling, living patterns. Shock and wonder flickered across their faces. Catching the astonishment in their gazes, Ye Cheng allowed himself a small, knowing smile. He swept his arm toward the ship. This treasure was discovered by my grandson. We call it the Great Brahma Mirror Boat. Ye Cheng ran his fingers along the hull of the Great Brahma Mirror Boat, a faint smile playing at his lips. It may not be a weapon, he said, and its rank is only top 6, but look at this array design. Even among Emperor-level formations, it stands alone. Thanks to this vessel, any member of the Gu family traveling beyond their home territory can buy precious time, even if confronted by a Dowson Realm Titan or an Emperor-level cultivator. That delay, brief though it is, gives them the chance to unleash the ship's secret power. Ye Cheng lifted his hand and traced a series of runes in the air. Instantly, spiritual energy poured into the mirror boat. Its carved panels flared with light, and the sculpted ship expanded, growing to a span of over 10 feet. It wasn't as swift or far-ranging as a true cross-domain skyboat, but it boasted intricately tiered pavilions and balconies at every level. Then, with a second, deeper resonance, the Great Brahma boat revealed its ultimate transformation. A brilliant radiance washed over the vessel, then shivered outward in rippling waves. The light solidified into a shimmering, lake-like phantom that hovered before the ship, a living mirror portal ready to whisk its passengers away to distant realms. Ye Cheng turned to his grandfather with a bright smile. "Grandpa, where exactly is Nalan Peak located in the 3,000 realms? Could you tell your grandson the precise boundary marker?" Elder Yunshan, who had been studying the Great Brahma boat's powers with keen interest, snapped back to attention at the question. In a clear voice, he recited the exact coordinates of Nalan Peak's border. Ye Cheng committed them to memory, then reached out with his mind to reinforce the boat's core formation. With a subtle motion of his hand, he poured 10,000 spirit crystals into the vessel's heart. He glanced at Gu Chang and Gu Quan, who were standing patiently by. "Uncle, Aunt," he called, "we'll be back before you know it. Don't wait up for us. Feel free to send word to the others and start preparing the banquet." Both nodded eagerly. Everything was in place. A low rumble built beneath the boat as Ye Cheng funneled his energy into the formation. In an instant, the Great Brahma boat and its passengers, Ye Cheng himself, Nalan Yan, Gu Yuan, Nalan Qingyuan, and the rest, were swallowed by a shimmering, mirror-like portal that appeared before them. With a final surge of power, the spirit vessel vanished from sight, bound for the mysterious realm of Nalan Peak. In the next moment, the Great Brahma boat reappeared in the void just outside Nalan Peak. It's already here?" All at once, Nalan Lingfeng hovered before them in the boundless emptiness. Nalan Yan and the others gaped, their eyes widening in disbelief. Even Gu Yuan stood frozen. After all, Nalan Peak lies at least 10 realms beyond the spirit realm, and one of those realms is the vast Qian realm. For any vessel to cover that span in the blink of an eye would require emperor-level might. Yuan knew his son had been fortunate of late, collecting rare treasures and forging powerful connections. Still, nothing had prepared him for the Brahma boat's teleportation magic. Noticing his father's and grandfather's stunned expressions, Ye Cheng offered a modest smile and waved a hand. "It's nothing," he said, "just one of the Brahma boat's functions. It can't be used continuously, but in a pinch it can instantly cross as many as 20 realms." With that, the void grew quiet once more, the ship poised between worlds, ready for whatever came next. However, this ability devours an immense quantity of spirit crystals, and it can only be used 3 times in a single day. Push it any further, and the boat's core formation will suffer irreversible damage. reducing this Brahma vessel to no more than an ordinary top-tier 6th-grade spirit boat. Even so, for occasional trips like this one, it remains an invaluable asset. Ye Cheng finished speaking and turned his gaze to Nalan Feng. When he entered the Nalan family, he had made no grand announcement. As he declared back at the Gu estate, his mother and sister might still feel loyalty or affection for the Nalans, but he was different. Although the Nalans treated him more respectfully than the Zhongs ever had, to the Gu clan he was still an outsider. Aside from his grandfather, Nalan Yunshan, and his own mother and sister, Qing Yuan, Ye Cheng had no desire to socialize with or even acknowledge any other Nalan family member. He never spoke these words aloud, of course. Yet both Nalan Yunshan and Nalan Yan could see his true feelings reflected plainly in his expression. Ye Cheng's eyes flicked toward Nalan Peak. Nalan Yunshan leaned in and whispered, "Ye Cheng, why don't you go up there first? Call out to Grandpa and explain what's happened. Don't trouble him." Before she could finish, Ye Cheng cut in with a gentle smile. He lowered his gaze and lifted a hand almost imperceptibly. The intensity in his eyes wasn't directed at the mountain, it was his spiritual sense, quietly extending outward to pinpoint his grandfather's exact location. He'd already locked onto it. Grandpa's in solitary seclusion. It'll be far more efficient if we go to him ourselves. If they summoned Nalan Ba through the usual channels, his loyal aides might meddle again. Ye Cheng had no time to waste on Nalan family politics. Grandpa's in seclusion? Ye Cheng, how did you? Nalan Yunshan stared at him in stunned silence. After all, Nalan Ba was the formidable patriarch of the entire clan. Yet here Ye Cheng was, as calm and confident as if he'd been expecting this all along. Ye Cheng could only enter seclusion within the Nalan family's ancestral lands, and even there, no matter how formidable his spirit energy, he would have no direct means of locating Nalan Ba. But before Nalan Yunshan's racing thoughts could take him anywhere, the young man's gaze went slack with shock. With a single, effortless motion of his hand, Ye Cheng cleaved the very fabric of space, ripping open a crack in the void. Through that jagged tier lay one unmistakable sight, the Nalan family's ancestral domain, the ancestral lands of the Nalan clan. At this very moment, Nalan Ba was in secluded retreat there. He had long since abandoned any hope of ascending to the Daozun realm. Yet now, with the great world unfurling before them and his brother Nalan Yunshan on the verge of fully healing and advancing to Daozun status, Nalan Ba felt ambition stirring once more. In the grand scheme, a clan protected by 2 Daozuns would stand far stronger against the perils of this new age than one led by a lone transcendent. And on a more personal level, Nalan Ba, himself only at St. Zun, could not ignore the advantage that his brother's rise would bring to the Nalan name. Ye Cheng watched Nalan Yunshan with a troubled expression. Yunshan might seem indifferent now, but who could say whether his brother would ever rethink his feelings? Worse still, Ye Cheng couldn't shake the guilt that weighed on him for how harshly he'd treated Yunshan while the latter lay injured and unconscious. If he failed to break through to the Daozun realm, no amount of courtesy from Yunshan would ever still his conscience. What depressed Ye Cheng even more was the reality of his cultivation. Although the Great Domain's arrival had vastly eased the path to advancement, each time he sat down to practice, he only felt helpless. His chances of shattering the bottleneck and ascending to Daozun were still vanishingly small. Optimistically, he might manage 2 or 3 breakthroughs, and that would take years. Damn! If only the Guardian sect had accepted my marriage proposal, he muttered under his breath. He recalled the promise the Guardian sect heir had made when he proposed, a heavenly Tao pill stamped with a perfect pill seal. That miraculous elixir could refine a cultivator's veins in a single dose. At the thought of it, Ye Cheng's heart sank further, weighed down by both longing and regret. Although it was only a heavenly Tao pill, an ancient relic from the long quiet age before the myriad Taos had fully awakened, it still carried the power to boost one's chance of breaking through to Daozun by 10%. Now that the great world had dawned and the great Tao once again shone brightly, such a pill was more precious than ever. Even if it couldn't push his odds all the way to 70 or 80%, Nalan Ba convinced himself 50 would be enough. Yet thinking this only weighed him down further. His elder, Nalan Yunshan, had just emerged from seclusion and already shattered the Daozun threshold. No matter how discouraged he felt, Nalan Ba kept his expression perfectly composed. Only in the solitude of his private retreat did he allow himself a bitter sigh. He'd barely exhaled his regret when a sudden crack split the air. Nalan Ba's body froze. Instinctively, he jerked his head up, eyes widening as he braced for whatever had shattered so unexpectedly. Nalan Ba had always believed that not even the greatest Daozun perfected masters could breach the Nalan clan's ancestral grounds undetected. Yet in an instant, the very air before him tore open, a jagged slash through reality itself. Before he could even draw a breath, a young man stepped through the rift, sword in hand, and met Nalan Ba's startled gaze with a hint of laughter in his eyes. The moment their eyes locked, an irresistible force seemed to surge from the newcomer, pinning Nalan Ba in place until his lungs ached for air. Still, the elder's face remained composed, until he heard the voice that followed, calm and teasing, but edged with a chill. "Grandfather," the youth said, voice light as a summer breeze, yet carrying a razor's bite, "you're still bitter about not forcing my mother to marry the Heaven Guardian's son, aren't you?" Those words cut deeper than any blade. Nalan Ba's heart trembled. "Son?" he whispered, disbelief warring with shock. Chapter 237, Nalan Ba had already reached out to activate his clan's lethal formation when Ye Cheng spoke. The elder's hand froze in midair, and his face drained of color as he stared at Ye Cheng, as though he'd seen a ghost. "Are you Yanner's son? The heir of that ruined clan?" His voice cracked. Nalan Ba had personally escorted Nalan Yan and Nalan Qingyuan back to Nalan Peak and knew full well the Gu family's downfall. In his eyes, the entire Gu clan was a squashed insect. Destroying them would have required nothing more than a flick of his finger. He had held back only because Nalan Yan had threatened suicide and because he'd never taken the Gu family seriously. Even if they hated him, so what? Mere ants could never threaten him. Yet now, confronted with the cold contempt radiating from Ye Cheng, Nalan Ba felt a tremor of fear as if he were in a nightmare. How could someone with such overwhelming power emerge from a family on the brink of extinction? Power like this, even Daozun-level titans wouldn't surpass it. Nalan Ba stood frozen, his body trembling as a soft whoosh filled the air. Through the shimmering void crack behind Ye Cheng stepped Nalan Yunshan, Nalan Yan, Nalan Qingyuan, and at last, Gu Yuan himself. Nalan Ba's eyes went wide as they fixed on Gu Yuan. His voice choked on the words. You're the son of that ruined clan. How could you have broken through to the Saint Emperor realm? He'd already been stunned by Ye Cheng's sudden arrival. But Gu Yuan, he remembered him all too well, the worthless youth who hadn't even reached the king realm. And yet, in barely 20 years, that same man had not only cleared the king realm, but now stood at the pinnacle of Saint Emperor prowess? At less than 50 years old? The realization nearly stopped his heart. Standing before him was Gu Yuan, a Saint Emperor not yet 50, a prodigy whose power alone reduced the Nalan clan and every loyal imperial in Yuheng Palace to insignificance. As the saying goes, comparison breeds contempt, and Gu Yuan's very presence shattered the last vestige of confidence in Nalan Ba. "I don't have time for pleasantries," Ye Cheng said, his voice like ice. He advanced, eyes flashing. "Tell me, do you still possess the Gu blood you extracted from Yuaner?" At that name, Nalan Ba trembled, the chill in Ye Cheng's gaze cutting him to the bone. He stammered as realization dawned, the corrupt essence he'd siphoned from Gu Yuan's body. Panic surged through him. "Did you destroy it all?" he blurted, trying to buy time. Ye Cheng's expression grew darker, his tone dropping even lower. The air between them grew frigid, and Nalan Ba felt his breath hitch. No. Nalan Ba gasped. "The impurity, it's still intact. I haven't lost a drop of it." Ye Cheng reached into his storage ring and withdrew a small vial of pale red blood. It was the residue of Gu blood he'd once extracted from Nalan Qingyuan. Back then, he'd scorned it as a taint, yet destroying it risked draining Qingyuan's life force and stalling his cultivation. Luckily, Qingyuan's subsequent breakthroughs were flawless. His talent outshone every young member of the Nalan clan, and Nalan Ba breathed a sigh of relief. In the aftermath, the vial remained tucked away in the ring, an impurity conveniently forgotten. Now, at Ye Cheng's quiet prompt, Nalan Ba's heart skipped a beat. He rummaged through his storage ring, found the vial, and bowed his head as he extended it with both hands. His fingers shook so badly the glass rattled, but not a word escaped him. Ye Cheng had called him grandfather, and though Nalanba's respect for the young man bordered on reverence, he dared not reciprocate with grandson. All he could think, his pulse hammering, was how fortunate he was that Ye Cheng hadn't unleashed his wrath upon him. Nalanba gently handed over the vial containing the Gu family's bloodline. Watching her father do so, Nalan Yan and Nalan Yunshan both exhaled in relief, especially Nalan Yan. Now that her husband's own bloodline had been elevated to a top-tier Jinyu S level, she was certain, if their daughter could properly refine this power, even if her natural talent fell a little short of her father's, she'd still stand among the very best. What mother wouldn't wish such promise for her child? Nalan Yunshan shared that hope and hurried forward to present the precious vial to Ye Cheng. But the instant he held it, his expression went pale. "Ye Cheng, something's wrong," he whispered, voice tight with alarm. "What is it?" Both Ye Cheng and Nalanba looked up. Ye Cheng's brow furrowed in concern, Nalanba's eyes widening with dawning dread. Ye Cheng stepped forward and carefully took the glass container from Yunshan's unsteady grip. He peered inside and froze. There was no crimson fluid at all, only an almost imperceptible film clinging to the inner walls. The legendary Gu bloodline, which everyone had pinned their hopes on, had all but vanished. Over the years, the rest of that blood's power had all but seeped away, its spiritual potency nearly gone. Ye Cheng's gaze turned cold as ice. This isn't my fault. I had no way of knowing this would happen," he snarled. Nalanba froze under the intensity of Ye Cheng's aura, scrambling for an explanation. At the time, he'd considered that vial of Gu blood a flawed sample, hardly worth sacrificing a high-grade storage talisman. A simple spirit vessel, he'd thought, would do. In 3 to 5 years, they could test whether Nalan Qingyuan's cultivation talent had been affected by the incomplete blood. If it proved useless, they'd simply discard it and be done with it. Surely no harm could come of it in the meantime. But now that plan had backfired spectacularly. Ye Cheng's contemptuous glare told him as much. "Elder Nalanba," Ye Cheng said, voice low and cutting, "you've outdone yourself." From the side, Nalan Yan, normally composed, spoke up, her tone laced with anger and frost. Even Gu Yuan's eyes flickered with indignation. Ye Cheng raised a hand to still them. "Let it go," he said, though every muscle in his body trembled with restrained fury. Just then, Nalanba froze the instant he heard that voice. So clear and ethereal it seemed like a heavenly chime, only to realize it belonged to Ye Cheng, the very person he feared most. "Ye Cheng, what do you mean you're all right?" Nalanba stammered, unable to hide his shock. Beside him, Gu Yuan leaned forward without hesitation. Even Nalan Qingyuan glanced up at her brother, her wide eyes shimmering with concern. As tension thickened in the air, Ye Cheng let a small, confident smile play across his lips. "Though the vitality and spiritual essence in this vial have nearly run dry, they aren't entirely gone," he said calmly, holding up the nearly empty bottle. "And that final trace is more than enough for me." He extended his hand, allowing a slender thread of luminescent energy to drift from his fingertips into the vial. Slowly, he rotated it in his palm. Inside, the last remnants of holy blood swirled together, drawn out by Ye Cheng's power, until at last they condensed into a single drop that gleamed with a soft golden glow. Boom! A faint Taoist incantation, impossible to capture in words, radiated from the single drop of holy blood, drawing every eye in the courtyard in stunned silence. Though no larger than a pinprick, the glimmering orb pulsed with the very essence of heaven and earth. "Yuaner, be ready!" Ye Cheng's voice cut through the awe, steady and calm. Nalan Qingyuan hurried forward. With a deft flick of his finger, Ye Cheng sent the golden droplet soaring through the air. Swoosh! It landed squarely upon Qingyuan's forehead. In that instant, her normally tranquil spiritual power surged as if an entire ocean had been set to boil, volcanoes of energy erupting in every vein. She couldn't help but gasp. That single drop of sacred blood ignited her circulation like wildfire, coursing through her meridians, refining her limbs and bones in a brilliant, purifying blaze. Every part of him, even his dantian and his sea of consciousness, throbbed with the Gu family's blood. Under that raging current, Nalan Qingyuan's body began to reshape itself from the inside out. In response, his aura erupted forward in blinding leaps. Heavenly King, God King, late-stage God King Perfection, the threshold of the mysterious Emperor realm, and already he was pressing into the late-stage mysterious Emperor. All around him, the spectators, Nalan Ba among them, stood rooted in disbelief. They had already watched Ye Cheng's incredible rise. From a boy so unpromising, he might never even break through, to a giant in the Saint Emperor realm. Nalan Ba had high hopes for Qingyuan once he awakened his true bloodline, but he had never imagined that siphoning a single drop of the Gu family's essence could trigger such an extraordinary leap. That single drop of Ye Cheng's true blood had already unleashed a breathtaking transformation in Nalan Qingyuan, catapulting him from the heavenly king realm straight to the pinnacle of divine king. Even so, what Nalan Ba witnessed now surpassed all expectations. Rather than leveling off after reaching his apex, Nalan Qingyuan's power continued to climb, ebbing ever higher with each passing moment. Turbulent waves of astonishment roiled through Nalan Ba's chest, leaving him shaken to his core. Only when the incense stick burned down did Nalan Qingyuan's aura finally settle. Blinking back his days, Nalan Ba looked at the figure floating before him. Gone was the familiar cultivation master he once knew. In his place hovered a being of transcendent poise, as if a goddess of the nine heavens, borne aloft by the pure spiritual energy of the earth and sky. Nalan Ba forced himself to inhale deeply, then gently unfurled a sliver of his consciousness to gauge the true depth of Nalan Qingyuan's cultivation at this extraordinary moment. When Ye Cheng regained consciousness and took in the little girl's cultivation level, even he, the legendary hero who restored the Nalan clan and now ruled Nalan Peak, was left utterly speechless. Chapter 238. As her ancestral bloodline reawakened, Nalan Qingyuan's violent fluctuations of aura finally subsided. The last of the strange phenomena faded away, and with them the limits of her former cultivation. She blinked, astonished, to discover that she had broken through into the Emperor realm. A torrent of unprecedented spiritual power coursed through her body, leaving her both exhilarated and wide-eyed. Outside the ancestral chamber, the faint rumble of thunder grew louder, accompanied by the oppressive, destructive pressure of a heavenly tribulation. The very air quivered with its might. Nalan Qingyuan glanced first at senior brother Nalan Ba with a swirl of emotion in her eyes, then turned to Ye Cheng and spoke softly. "Brother, I'm ready. I'll face the thunder tribulation now." Ye Cheng inclined his head, his expression calm but alert. Beside him, Nalan Yan's voice trembled with concern. "Qingyuan, how do you feel? Can you withstand an emperor's thunder tribulation?" Her worry was understandable. The tribulation that awaited her was born of emperor-level energy, so fierce that even Nalan Ba had been shaken by its power. Nalan Qingyuan closed her eyes, drawing a steadying breath. A serene confidence settled over her features. "I've prepared my body and mind. Let the tribulation come." With that, she planted her feet firmly, raised her arms, and focused every ounce of her newfound strength on the tempest gathering overhead. The roar of thunder answered her challenge, and the first bolt of divine lightning struck. The ancestral chamber of the Nalan clan was the work of their very first forebear, a supreme Tao master, who had even called upon the Yuheng Emperor in person to fortify its defenses. Over countless generations, its wards remained so potent that not even an ordinary emperor-level thunder tribulation could penetrate them. Yet today, deep within the ancestral space, the crackling roar of imperial thunder lashes at the barriers like a raging sea. Clearly, Nalan Qingyuan's tribulation has far surpassed anything the Nalan clan has ever witnessed. Still, Qingyuan stands calm, the corners of her mouth quirked in a self-assured smile. "Mother, I promise you, I know exactly what I'm doing. I won't be in danger." Nalan Yan's eyes brim with worry, but at her side Ye Cheng steps forward and lays a steadying hand on her shoulder. "Don't fear, Mother. Qingyuan's talent and cultivation have leapt ahead of before. She's more than ready." With a single fluid motion, Ye Cheng draws his sword and carves a slender fissure through the ancestral chamber's boundary, the slit glowing faintly as it slices through space. He turns and gives Qingyuan a firm nod, then gently urges her forward into the crackling storm beyond. Qingyuan's figure straightens. Though her innate fate has not yet blossomed into the legendary scarlet fate the clan once spoke of, Ye Cheng's confidence in her is absolute. She steps into the heart of the Thunder Tribulation, resolved to prove that her strength can stand against even the Emperor's wrath. But she's also awakened a 6th-grade golden fate, the true Phoenix divine body, which is astonishingly powerful. Not only does she possess a natural affinity for the twin great paths of life and death and fire, her cultivation talent far outstrips that of her peers. Once Nalan Qingyuan ascends the throne, she'll be able to unlock the inherited skill ranked among the top 100 of the 3,000 arcane arts, the true Phoenix Great Divine Power. With that immense power, combined with her true Phoenix Divine Body's innate mastery of the fire-based life and death path, she will be utterly invincible among her generation. She'll secure a spot in the top 10 of the New Earth roster, shine brightly in the Golden Age, and have no trouble rising to the ranks of Saint and Ancestor. By that time, my third daughter, Guyiren, will likely have come of age as well. By the time all this settles, Yunxi will be sitting firmly in first place on the Earth list. Guyiren and my second wife, Lan Qing's, Yuan, will be locked in a fierce struggle for second. Close behind them will be Qingchen, my first wife, Jiang Lianshan, my devoted follower Jian Rushuang, and even the younger Gu heirs, Qingcheng and Qing'er, trained by the branch families. In fact, there's a real chance that the top 10 or even the top 20 spots on the Earth list will be filled by members of my own clan. The thought alone made Ye Cheng's heart race with anticipation. Lost in these daydreams, he almost didn't notice the commotion rising outside. On Nalan Peak, a thunder tribulation of almost Fengzhen level had erupted, its raw power drawing every cultivator's gaze. Whispers spread among the onlookers. Which elder had provoked such a cataclysmic storm? They needn't have waited long for an answer. With a cry that cleaved through the thunder, their revered saint, Nalan Qingyuan, soared upward into the roiling tempest, ready to face the tribulation head-on. The unexpected outcome nearly made their eyes pop. How could anyone remain calm? The one who survived the tribulation is a saint of our Nalan family? Has Qingyuan really broken through to the heavenly emperor realm? As the elders, just returned from seclusion to investigate the rumors, felt those aura fluctuations, disbelief gave way to astonishment. At first, they sensed the might of the imperial realm, but then, unmistakably, it soared beyond that, the heavenly emperor realm itself. At only 20 years old, Nalan Qingyuan had outpaced countless heirs of the emperor sect. Marvelous! May heaven continue to shine its favor upon the Nalan family. A chorus of voices rang out in elation. Every elder beamed with pride, except for a small contingent from Nalan Ba's branch. Although they knew Qingyuan's transcendent talent would herald unprecedented glory for the clan, envy twisted their expressions, betraying their unease. Now that Nalan Yunshan has emerged from seclusion as a Dao Zun, his prestige within the clan has soared, eclipsing even Nalan Ba's long-held influence. And with Nalan Qingyuan proving her strength, the question on every elder's mind is clear. Who will ultimately steer the future of the Nalan family? We must consult the clan leader at once, one elder muttered, and almost at once a dozen of them were on their feet, hastening toward the ancestral estate to seek guidance. But Nalan Qingyuan paid their hushed debates no heed. Her gaze was fixed on the storm-choked sky above. As thunder rumbled, she drew in a deep breath, channeling her spiritual energy until it ignited into veins of searing flame. Dozens of blazing torrents arced around her, each one crackling with lethal intent. In scarcely the time it takes to bow one's head in prayer, those raging bolts of thunder had been shredded to nothingness, dissipating before her like mist in the morning sun. The remaining elders, scattered around the training grounds, watched in stunned silence as the final echoes of thunder faded. Never before had any of them witnessed such effortless mastery over a tribulation of that magnitude. And they all knew, with sudden, unspoken certainty, that the balance of power within the clan had shifted yet again. Ye Cheng slipped away from the cluster of Nalan elders who had come to offer their congratulations. Ignoring their puzzled stares, he followed the narrow rift his brother had painstakingly carved, and soon re-emerged before Nalan Ba and the others. He felt a pang of unexpected loyalty toward the Nalan clan. Yet that sentiment could not erase the memory of how they had wronged his own family. Until now, he'd stifled his anger for his mother's sake. But with his father and brother safely returned, there was nothing left to hold him back. He didn't know how he'd face these elders, and for a moment he hesitated, glancing at their startled expressions. Nalan Ba, seated at the head of the ancestral hall, was the first to recover. When Ye Cheng stepped into view, he sprang up, concern flooding his voice. "Ye Cheng, why have you come back so soon? Did the thunder tribulation overwhelm you?" His words caught in his throat. The air around Ye Cheng crackled with an astonishingly dense aura of spiritual power, far beyond anything Nalan Ba had expected. Even from across the chamber, the force of it made the hairs on his arms rise. Only by surviving the thunder tribulation can one ever hope to advance, and that goes without saying. It wasn't that his niece had never endured such a trial before. In her previous tribulations, she'd managed to scrape through with nothing more than a single incense stick. Could it be that the Gu family's bloodline has truly strengthened her? Nalan Ba stared in stunned silence at Nalan Qingyuan. He couldn't help but recall how he had once dragged her back to the clan, determined to tap into the Gu bloodline's power. At the time, he had convinced himself that when she grew up and understood his motives, she'd be grateful for his boldness. But now, he felt only a crushing sense of foolishness. Chapter 239, Nalan Ba gave a wry smile, and Nalan Qingyuan sighed softly. She glanced once more at her mother, her father, and her brother before leaning toward Ye Cheng and whispering, "Brother, mother, father, can we go home now?" Ye Cheng caught the mix of emotions in his sister's eyes and the familiar concern on Nalan Ba's face, and chose not to reprimand his brother further. He reached out, gently tussling Qingyuan's hair. "All right, let's go home first." He activated the void fracture, summoned the great Brahma boat, and guided the spirit boat toward the portal. As the silver outline of the gateway shimmered into view, Qingyuan suddenly called out, "Grandpa?" Ye Cheng froze. In the rush to depart, they'd left Nalan Yunshan behind. Carefully settling Qingyuan onto the boat's deck, he turned to her. "Stay here, Qinger. We'll take care of everything else." With that, he reinforced the spirit boat's aura and slipped through the void, carrying his sister safely home while the rest of the party remained behind. Ye Cheng stepped forward, bowing his head respectfully. "Grandpa, Bayer and I have something important to discuss with great-grandfather in the spirit realm." Nalan Yunshan's face grew serious. After a beat, Ye Cheng gave a firm nod. "Very well, we'll wait for you there." "Don't worry," Nalan Yunshan replied with a rare smile. "I'll come as soon as I can." He patted Ye Cheng on the shoulder and watched as the two young cultivators vanished in a swirl of spirit chi. As their figures faded, Nalan Ba finally relaxed, exhaling a long, relieved sigh. He'd managed to secure both his life and his position as clan leader. No small victory, even if Qingyuan's affection for him had cooled. Yet as Nalan Ba surveyed his brother's calm, assessing gaze, a sudden doubt gnawed at him. Nalan Yunshan folded his arms and regarded his sibling coolly. "Do you really believe you've been fortunate?" Yunshan asked, his tone level but edged with steel. "That it's merely luck you retain your title and your life, simply because Qingyuan once showed you mercy?" Nalan Ba stiffened, a flush creeping up his neck. He opened his mouth, searching for a retort, but all he could manage was a pained, "Yunshan, are you accusing me of riding on Qingyuan's goodwill? Or humiliating me? Humiliate?" Nalan Yunshan echoed quietly, his expression unreadable. "Think on it carefully." "You're overthinking this," Nalan Yunshan said, disappointment softening his voice as he looked at his brother, Nalan Ba. He had come back hoping to leave old grievances behind for the sake of the next generation. The Gu family was generous and forgiving. Even if past decisions had wounded them, his grandson Ye Cheng would never let bitterness overshadow the future. Yet as clan patriarch, Yunshan couldn't simply ignore Ba's unchanging attitude. Seeing there was no remorse, his last flicker of hope faded into sorrow. "You still defend that choice you made all those years ago," Yunshan went on, his tone edged with pity. "You treat every child in our clan as if they're nothing more than coins, sacrificable so long as they serve your purposes." He shook his head slowly. "Your recklessness will only breed more Yanners in our ranks. The families they marry into won't all be as fortunate as the Gu household, which somehow managed to raise a genius like Ye Cheng." Keep going like this, and sooner or later, one of those young women, or their offspring, will be pushed far enough to unsheath a sword against you. And when that day comes, the Nalan clan. He let the words hang in the air, the unspoken fallout echoing between them. Yunshan watched Nalan Ba stand there, stunned, and felt a resolve harden in his heart. He would no longer allow the clan's daughters, nor anyone else, to be treated as mere bargaining chips. The Nalan clan no longer held any reason for him to stay. His grandson, Ye Cheng, had come of age, and there was no shame in a grandfather stepping aside, to guide rather than to rule. Yet before he took his leave, Nalan Yunshan had one final move to make. With a faint smile, Yunshan raised his hand and fixed his gaze on the assembled elders. "I doubt you'll heed my counsel," he said softly. "So let me put it in terms you'll understand." He let the silence stretch, watching their expressions tighten. "Do you truly believe you can preserve your life and your position as clan leader by dangling Yuaner, Chinger, and your old bonds to the Nalan name? Tell me, do you even know what Chinger delivered to us rogue elders when she first arrived?" Before anyone could answer, Yunshan flicked his wrist. In an instant, the 9-pattern dragon spirit heaven pill, Ye Cheng's precious gift, materialized above his palm. Its intricate dragon scale patterns glowed with an inner fire, and a wave of pure life essence rippled through the chamber like a thunderclap. Nalan Ba's eyes went wide. His breathing hitched, his voice caught in his throat. He stared at the celestial pill, equal parts terror and longing etched across his face. 9 Dan meridians, and the dragon spirit heaven pill. Ye Cheng's eyes shook with disbelief. He stared up at Nalan Yunshan, throat dry, unable to form a coherent sentence. His voice rasped out the only question on his mind. "Brother, which are you more thrilled by, the Dragon Spirit Heaven Pill or the Heavenly Tao Pill you've been so obsessed with?" Nalan Yunshan's gaze was calm, almost indifferent. After a moment, he answered evenly, "Both are remarkable, but this is only the beginning." He didn't linger to elaborate. Without another word, he turned and followed the fissure Ye Cheng had cleaved in the cliff face, vanishing through it toward the exit of the Nalan ancestral grounds. Left alone, Nalan Ba stood frozen in place. Only when the last trace of Yunshan's presence faded and the distant calls of his anxious elders reached his ears did he finally shake himself back to life. His eyes snapped open, blazing with renewed determination. "Chief," he called out, rushing forward, "Miss Qingyuan's talent is off the charts. If we don't act now, we'll lose our chance to secure her allegiance." "Should we do something?" one elder asked, eyes flicking toward the clan chief. "Yes," another replied, voice firm. "If we don't act now, Elder Yunshan's branch will grow too powerful to check, and that could spell disaster for the Gu family." They bowed respectfully to Chief Ye Cheng. "Though Elder Yunshan has served our clan well in the past," one elder continued, "it is your leadership, Chief, that has brought us back from decline these last few years. We all cherish the bonds of family, but sometimes difficult decisions and sacrifices must be made." Ye Cheng listened in silence to their sincere counsel. His thoughts drifted to his brother's stern farewell, to that unshakable look in his eyes before he departed, and to the sheer might of the dragon spirit heaven pill, which had left him reeling. He forced a wry, bitter smile. In that moment, every ambition, every hunger for power he had ever harbored, crumbled away, gone, without a trace. Chapter 240. "So, Grandpa, you're not going back to Nalan Peak from now on?" Ye Cheng asked, his eyes shining with surprise and gratitude as he looked at Nalan Yunshan, who had just returned to the spirit realm. He hadn't expected his grandfather to break ties with the Nalan family for their sake. Nalan Yunshan scratched the back of his head, suddenly bashful. "Chinger, don't think Grandpa did anything heroic," he protested, waving his hands. "I'm just proud of my grandson becoming so strong." Ye Cheng laughed and let the matter drop. With a warm smile, he said, "All right, Grandpa, but I'll be counting on your help from now on. There's so much ahead of me that needs your guidance." He wasn't merely flattering the old man. Now that Ye Cheng had advanced to the rank of venerable, the Gu family's power was no longer what it once had been. In every branch of the clan, new prodigies were emerging, and if they remained scattered, their talents would be stifled. It was time to gather them together under one roof, to nurture their potential and restore the family's glory. The Kangming-gu family and its direct offshoots, the Zhonglin branch and the others, have been in a frenzy these past few days. Each branch has been ordered to send its young prodigies back to the main estate for formal cultivation. At the same time, any black sheep who hide behind the Gu name, stirring up trouble without offering anything in return, must be rooted out. Those who have contributed loyally are to be handsomely rewarded. In short, the workload is enormous. Even if I were to dispatch every last subordinate from the Tianshu Pavilion, it still wouldn't be enough. What we need is someone who can coordinate the entire effort. My grandfather is the perfect choice, both in power and in prestige. Aside from myself, no one in the Gu family matches his Daozun realm cultivation, and no one dares cross him. When I laid out the plan, Grandfather Nalan Yunshan broke into a satisfied smile. "All right," he said, "it seems this is exactly the kind of task I can take on. Now I can finally rest easy. Before we go any further, there's a small matter I need to settle first." Nalan Yunshan paused and looked from Nalan Yan to Nalan Qingyuan, who stood beside Ye Cheng. "Yuan Heir," he said, "the Imperial Palace issued an edict reserving you a spot for the Tianling Palace expedition. Before I left Nalan Peak, I spoke with several palace elders about it, but they insisted that this opportunity be yours alone. Would you like to take it?" Since the dawn of this new era, imperial treasures have surfaced across the realms, and the Yuheng Imperial Palace is no exception. Among its recent discoveries is the fabled Tianling Palace, a sprawling complex of dozens of interlocking courtyards and halls. Imperial sects far and wide have dispatched teams to probe its depths, yet progress has been agonizingly slow. According to the scant intelligence that has filtered out, the palace was sealed long ago by a sect of Saint Emperor caliber, fortifications and barriers no mere Xuan emperor can easily overcome. Even within Yuheng's ranks, where most sects can muster only one or two Xuan emperors, forcing an entrance into the Tianling Palace remains a daunting, if not impossible task. Some time ago, the Yuheng Imperial Palace finally overcame the hurdles and activated a new palace formation, one that would allow its junior prodigies to enter and explore. Naturally, the first wave of entrants would be the brightest young talents of the palace, and the slots were staggeringly scarce. Although Nalan Qingyuan was hailed as the saint of Nalan Peak, her earlier struggles meant she would have had little hope of securing one of the inaugural spots on merit alone. In truth, this opportunity had been granted more as a courtesy to her father, Nalan Yunshan, in recognition of his past service and his imminent departure from both Nalan Peak and the Yuheng Imperial Palace. It was, in effect, an expression of goodwill. When Grandfather finished speaking, Nalan Qingyuan hesitated a moment before turning to Ye Cheng. "Brother Ye Cheng," she said shyly, "is there anything else I can ask you to help me with?" Ye Cheng laughed softly at her earnest gaze and the faint tremor in her voice. He straightened, ready to offer whatever assistance he could. Ye Cheng sensed Nalan Qingyuan's hesitations and waved a hand dismissively. "Yuan Heir, don't worry about me. If you want to go, by all means, you'll be a welcome addition, but I won't force you. Besides, we still have Grandfather's support." His teasing made her cheeks flush, but she steeled herself and nodded. "All right, I'll go." Though Nalan Qingyuan possessed the Saint Emperor-level inheritance, she wasn't so prodigious that her presence would overshadow everyone else. What set her apart was her station as Spirit Saint of Nalan Peak, one of the 8 branches under the Yuheng Imperial Palace. Over the years, she'd benefited from the palace's patronage and favor. Now, aiding the Yuheng Imperial Palace in conquering another branch offered the perfect chance to repay those debts, and frankly, she'd been itching for real action ever since her bloodline had finally matured. Grandfather's eyes gleamed with expectation as he regarded them both. Then he spoke the one name that quickened Ye Cheng's pulse. Tianling Palace. Ye Cheng felt a thrill of excitement. He'd heard countless rumors about Tianling Palace's power and mystery, and now they were about to face it head-on. Ye Cheng wasn't particularly eager to probe the deeper mysteries of Tianling Palace. That didn't mean no one else was, though. He looked up from his scroll and announced, "Qing Chen is at a critical stage in her Nirvana Heavenly Art cultivation right now. She mustn't be disturbed. Yunxi should take on this investigation." He paused, weighing his next words. "Besides, Tianling Palace has multiple wings. Let's not have her competing with the Yuheng Imperial Palace for the same one. With Gu Yunxi assigned to the task, Ye Cheng planned to travel alongside Nalan Qingyuan. The combined force of the two Nalan nobles and Yunxi would ensure the highest level of safety for the expedition. When he laid out his proposal, Nalan Qingyuan readily agreed. He trusted Ye Cheng's judgment implicitly. Gu Yunxi was even more enthusiastic. Though she carried herself with quiet dignity, her spirit was keenly adventurous. At the mere suggestion of heading out to train, she almost leaped to her feet and declared she was ready to set off at once. Only when Ye Cheng mentioned that organizing the Tianling Palace exploration would require over a month of preparation did Yunxi's excitement give way to a hint of concern. She fretted aloud, and both Nalan Qingyuan and his brother Nalan Yunshan exchanged amused glances. Once the arrangements for the Nalan brothers were firmly in place, Gu Yecheng turned his attention back to the broader preparations. Supplies to gather, seals to consult, and couriers to dispatch, ensuring every detail was covered before their journey began. Gu Yecheng wasted no time reopening the Yunsheng space, inviting his family to cultivate within its boundless expanse. Every morning, he would slip inside to meditate, letting the ancient Yunsheng furnace's energies envelop him. Nalan Yunshan, Nalan Qingyuan, and Nalan Yan watched with growing awe as the furnace's aura pulsed around them, and for a while, progress came swiftly. But as the days stretched on, Ye Cheng felt an unexpected drag on his cultivation. What had once been effortless now teetered on the verge of stagnation. This was not the breakthrough Fan Ursai had promised. Born with the legendary Chaos body, the ultimate physique of the ages, an inheritor of the Chaos Great Divine Power, ranked first among 3,000 divine legacies, Ye Cheng should have soared through the realms. His killing intent was unmatched by any peer. Yet the path of true power carries a frightening toll. Having just stepped into the Tianzun realm, he now faced its steepest challenge, advancing from Tianzun to Tianzun perfection. Under ordinary circumstances that would demand at least 1 or 2 6th-grade top-tier cultivation pills with fully formed nascent cores, or as many as 10 to 20 high-grade 6th-level elixirs. Even for someone of his caliber, gathering such treasures was no small feat, and so, within the tranquil confines of the Yunsheng space, Gu Yecheng steeled himself. To master his legacy, he would need every ounce of resolve, and every rare pill he could find. For most cultivators, stepping from Tianzun perfection into the Saint Venerable realm requires an almost 10-fold surge in spiritual power. Gu Yecheng had been secluded inside the Yunsheng furnace for nearly 2 months since entering the final stage of Tianzun cultivation, ample time to absorb and refine energy, even achieve a 20-fold increase. Yet no matter how deeply he probed, he could not sense even the slightest thinning of the realm barrier. His reserves were still far too insufficient to crack the threshold of the Saint Venerable realm. Damn it! Gu Yecheng had known progress would slow eventually. With his extraordinary innate talent, his cultivation speed more than 100 times that of a typical supreme giant, each new breakthrough demanded ever greater resources. Still, hitting this kind of bottleneck so soon stung more than he'd expected. At this rate, I'll need another year just to reach the Saint Venerable realm, he murmured, frustration tightening his chest. He closed his eyes again, forcing himself to refocus on the boundless spiritual currents that swirled through the Yunsheng furnace. No matter how long it took, he would find a way to push beyond this barrier. Gu Yecheng's eyes went wide. 3 years to reach the Tao Venerable realm? He swallowed hard, heart pounding. 3 whole years. That's just too long, too terrifying.